Hey everyone, how's it going? Oh my goodness. That was comical timing. How is everyone today? It's lovely to see everybody. Let me turn that down just a smidge more. Try and make it a relaxing background sound. Hello and welcome to the stream. Welcome to Purple Cow 1200, Nadia Yvette, Volpix989. Hello to Valerie the lovely Italian, lovely to have you here. Prince Infidel, welcome back to the stream. Jenny Azoth, always lovely to have you. Joe is here. Hey, Wintry Mute. Ninny161, hi. Who else have we got? Boop, 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 boop. Did Volpex's color change? No, they just didn't message for a minute. Link Retro and Catgirl Steph and Hermeneutics. Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. How are we all doing? How has our week been? Tell me all about it. We are going to be doing some liberal slop, as usual. That's the thing we do on the stream. Gosh, I need to have some of my tea, I think. I'm quite stuffed up. I had a cold now, like, a bit over a week ago, and I keep on thinking I'm over it, and then it's done. And then I keep on discovering, no. C'est non. C'est both. Valkyrie, hello, welcome to the stream. Valerie says, sore throat. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. A hot drink might help. I can't encourage people enough to enjoy a nice hot drink. A cup of tea can make everything so much better. My partner Abby has recently got us a big like HEPA filter, air filtering thing, because our place is quite dusty because we smoke. And now it's remarkably less dusty, which is quite nice, and has been, like, I've been appreciating it while also being stuffed up since this cold, and it's been an unfortunate coincidence that I want to be doing, like, the cleanest possible lungful of air in my house, because it's, all the air is super clean, but just quite at the moment. Volpix989 says, I am so cold because my room isn't heated well. I'm sorry to hear that. That really sucks. Hermeneutics says, I feel better than yesterday. I have a little less COVID. Oh my god, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is it actually COVID or is it... He's speaking... Is it figurative COVID or literal COVID? Purple Cow 1200 says, good, I just woke up. It's 1 p.m. where I am. So you are... somewhere in the middle of the American time zones. Right, we are going to do comments first. Then we've got a bunch of articles, all from the same place. Yee, says Purple Cow 1200. Hermeneutic says, I'm retaking the test as we speak, so we'll find out. You've reminded me that I need to do a blood test. Like I have an at-home blood test kit I need to do. Anyway, it's been a pretty nice and chill week for me. I have this like whiteboard over here that shows like what I've been up to, and it's like the it's like the big version of the anxiety I already had, which is that I film with my camera right next to me, and so you can see like if I've been doing like nothing with my month. But also, like, there's been stuff like... So the bigger version is the whiteboard. So I've had stuff like Sophie cum freezer on the on the whiteboard because I need to do gamete storage. And I've only... and then I've, like, filmed it and I've been like, oh, fuck, it's right. It's right there in the shot. Anyway, I was looking over there to remind myself what I've been up to, and we hung up the Christmas lights a few days ago. It's been a bit of a heavy week in some ways, like going through some kind of big feelings of trauma and fear in my body because of shit things that have happened around this time, kind of several years in a row. Not last year, just the trauma echo last year. And so getting through that, I needed to like reconnect with how my week's been, which has been delightful. We put up a Christmas tree. My partner made a bauble at a little pottery class, I guess, and did a Palestine flag and from the river to the tree on the bauble, which I find really cute. And what else? This is a mulled wine scented candle. I'm very excited about these things because I love Christmas. I'm very pro Christmas. I just like simply think that like a big festival of happiness in the middle of the winter is good. When people are critiquing it in a kind of way where it's like all the tying to Christianity and whatever, I'm nodding along with it and I'm like, yeah, that all totally, yeah, that those are problems in some regards with how Christmas is, but also like it's Christmas. Like you give each other presents, you hang out, you have nice big food, you see people that you love, you put up lights everywhere so that you can like show everyone that you're joining in on the festivities. It's just a sweet time. Like it feels like being on the inside of something when your whole neighborhood gets their lights out, I think. Like you're doing, you know, it's not a like a street party or whatever. I wish it were. That would be delightful. Just also the way that like snow brings everyone out as well. Like that's a very similar part of like winter joy, I think. Starlight Reverie, hello, welcome to the stream, says, if we abolish Christmas, we should replace it with a holiday involving gift giving and decorating a tree. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, I think that just, like, the practices of it, and maybe, I was joking earlier about maybe I'm going to do a liberal slop Christmas special in the next stream, I guess, next week. I might do that because there are inevitably always Christmas slops. They put out a special, you check your stocking and you find there is only slop in there. But I think that, you know, it's one of these like very worn observations about Christmas is that it's just the timing of like pagan festivals. Volpix989 says, ho ho ho, Merry Slopmas. Exactly. Slopmas to all, and to all a good slop. Purple Cow 1200 says, I wish Christmas was just as it appears in the Grinch IRL. Now I come to think of it, don't think I've seen any? How many have there been? Any Grinch content I've actually not seen. I know the Grinch. I think the Grinch is a fun character. Earlier I was playing the game everyone loves to play, Making Up a Guy. And I was imagining conspiracy Grinch, a guy who is who by all rights would be extremely pro-Christmas and very invested in the war on Christmas and protecting Christian values, but like he hates Christmas and thinks it's all part of a conspiracy. He's like the quickest to point out that Santa is an anagram of Satan. He thinks that Santa is in the demonic pedophile cabal and that like his, I don't know, like adrenochrome gets like supercharged by people leaving out milk and cookies or whatever. Why was I telling you this? Who knows? I'm going to quickly say to the VOD viewers, so I'm going to ignore the chat, which is what they like. They love it. It's sick for them, but it gets them off. Hey, VOD viewers. So I am going to use the YouTube editor tool, hopefully on this VOD and going forward, to remove all of the just music chilling, except for maybe like a minute or two at the start of streams from now on. So if you are one of the dedicated crew who, you know, very valiantly add the timestamps in for when the stream will actually start, don't bother doing that if there's still like 10 minutes on the start of the stream, because I think, you know what, now I'm thinking about it, I don't know if YouTube changes timestamps when you use that editor. That would be the sensible thing to do, but who knows. Anyway, that was the one thing. And the other thing was I saw a bunch of people have been donating with the link down below recently, and that really helps and is really lovely, and really appreciate it. Speaking of which, we're gonna have fewer streams this month than other months, because it's Christmas, obviously. And also I would really love to have more disposable income to buy presents for my loved ones. So there is a double incentivizing from me. Please donate if you're enjoying the stream. I really appreciate it, and I want to say to the VOD viewers, thank you so much for doing that. Is there anything else for the VOD viewers? I guess there's comments, so let's interact through time, back in time, with the VOD viewers from last week. So, Cat Cattington R5I says, a mobile harm reduction hub could also be done from a cargo bike or two, depending on how much equipment is needed. And if people don't remember what we're talking about here, last week we were briefly touching on, might have said this a couple of weeks in a row, chatting about the harm reduction hub, which is the thing I volunteer with, and there was a town hall meeting where we discussed different possibilities, and something we've been super into for a while is a mobile hub. Basically so that people... Anonymous, thank you so much for tipping £10. I really appreciate that. Everyone, please remember, if you're enjoying the stream, to consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer if you're on Twitch, or donate directly using command tip, and VOD viewers can also donate. But also my main income is at patreon.com/SophieFromMars, so you can support me there monthly if you want to do a standing payment. Harm Reduction Hub, there was this harm reduction activist who was known to like a lot of the harm reduction people around, and was really, really like great at what he did, and just determined to help people, and just got in a van and started doing like a mobile needle, mobile NSP basically, and like other harm reduction services. And so we were chatting about this. I remember the thing that really tickled me was the harm reduction van is the opposite of the Hitler car. I think that was in comments last week. I showed that to Mule immediately, and actually I think Mule just messaged me earlier because there was... he saw a chat message in someone else's stream where someone was saying there's no choice in like politics at the moment. It's like, which car do you want to drive to fascism land? And, and Mule just messaged me and said, you know which car. Anyway, the harm reduction van would be the opposite of the Hitler car. That's completely true. But that's all the context for this comment. And this was at CatGirlSteph. A mobile harm reduction hub could also be done from a cargo bike or two, depending on how much equipment is needed. And I replied, although the privacy of a space to talk and potentially offer tea or coffee makes a huge difference, we have also discussed harm reduction delivery options. All kind of depends on how chill the local council is. This is an important thing as well. Like, it's important to understand that when you are trying to help over-policed populations and people who believe a ton of like horrible, stigmatizing ideas. There are a bunch of horrible stigmatizing ideas about this population, and especially like in government. You know, sometimes you run into like what you legally can do, and you need to do legal risk assessment as well as like risk assessment to people in a more material way. Though I don't know the entire details, but I think that the original harm reduction van might have been not that, and might have just been like, no, fuck this, it's it's in the public interest for me to give out clean needle supplies and so on. So that was a good comment. I wanted to say overall yes, though, like you could have a couple cargo bikes full of clean needles and syringes and condoms and everything you'd want to distribute to people, and just bike around. Yeah, honestly, yeah. Row the Lion says, for me the thing about saying IA psychosis might not apply if the folks don't have an underlying disorder is, Have these diagnosticians seen the world? At the very least, your average person has some kind of generalized anxiety disorder, if not PTSD, from the last 5 years of global catastrophe. Every single day, folks are traumatized, most especially if they're online and aware, and these people want to tell us there's no underlying instability, just the right flavor of reality-blurring interaction is going to nudge into full-blown psychosis. Pull the other one. I quite like this comment. I feel like this gets to something that I'm trying to write about in my next big project, The Mad and the Mentally Ill. Just about how, like, fucking crazy making the world is, right? And it's like, the world is so completely crazy making in different ways at this point that, like, it's very... The diagnostic model starts to break down if people start presenting with more and more and more and crazier symptoms. And the thing about political instability is that it will drive people crazy, and it also will affect the mad the most. And like, so madness becomes like a foregrounded issue of great importance. This is why I've been saying how we organize in communities where everyone is generally struggling and mentally unwell is one of the most important questions of the next 50 years. Something go crazy, don't mind if I do, says Joe. Yeah, exactly. There's a repeated refrain in what I've got written of the project so far, and I want to also, for people who are curious about the project, where it's at the moment is like I have most of it written. I like the content of what I have, but I've kind of painted myself into a little bit of a corner because editing texts is not my strong suit, and I really need to do a big structural edit where I move stuff around and like think a bunch about how it's laid out, and then write little extra bits, and then it'll be ready, which I'm excited about. But the framework of like mental wellness that I vibe with the most and that I talk about in the essay as my like primary lens of analysis on things is R.D. Laing's ontological security. And like, that's all about basically being able to make sense of the world around you, right? Which I think is a pretty sensible place to start with discussing like what does being sane or mentally well, etc. mean? And hopefully you can also throw out the idea of like sane as an underlying normal kind of mental configuration, and understand that like people are built different, but also like if someone can't make sense of the world around them, they're probably experiencing quite a lot of emotional distress. And if they're not experiencing much of emotional distress while also unable to make sense of the world around them, they have a rare mental condition called being Albert Camus. They are a happy Sisyphus. But the thing I keep on, the refrain I keep on repeating in the essay is that like, we haven't even gotten to discussing the effects of climate change yet. I hold these on to like later in the essay because like climate change is so totalizing and affects everyone so uniformly, and guess what? It's going to make a whole bunch of people more crazy. It already is, and it's going to kill a bunch of people who are already more crazy. Yay! It's really horrible. Anyway, we were talking about that because we were looking at the comments. I'm going to go back to the comments. We've got one here from Pocket Deer Belly, who is just Pocket Deer in this YouTube comment. I think toxic masculinity as a term really set feminism back on some level, because as a word I think it disguises the machinations that are really going on when a person describes toxic masculinity. What we really usually mean is patriarchy, and under patriarchy all things viewed as masculine that is exhibited by men is rewarded no matter what. I think toxic masculinity as a term had a lot of people wasting their time trying to find a good, nice, positive form of masculinity that inadvertently or intentionally ended up reinforcing oppositional sexism without thinking about how defining protectiveness or strength as masculine traits would affect people's views on women. Once again, we're discussing the feelings of men and affirming that there's a totally good version of masculinity that totally exists, instead of getting men to understand the privilege of being able to point a gun at almost every woman in their lives. Powerful comment. I think again here we get down to like class analysis is the thing that we need, and that's the thing that we need to have a successful feminism, just as the same as, you know, any kind of feminism that we have, a trans feminism, a black feminism, disability advocacy and rights, and a world that is like more generally accessible. That's to do with a class analysis. I think that understanding women as an oppressed class, and understanding that what defines that oppressed class as being mostly external markers or presentation or to some degree social role helps us arrive at something that my ex Nat used to say a lot, which was like feminized people. And I really like this term. Basically, she's taking the idea that Stuart Hall brought to a lot of academic theory, which is like Stuart Hall liked to shift the nature of describing a population from essential characteristics to a process that's being done to them. Right. This is like very related to the use of marginalized rather than a minority, but also like racialized rather than a racial group or whatever. What's happening in chat? I've missed something. I'm gonna crash the harm reduction van into the Hitler car. Please don't. We can stop the Hitler car without also losing the harm reduction van. Oh fuck, but what if one of the people that you save with the harm reduction van is baby Hitler? Oh no, shit, I didn't think of this. Men, class analysis, right. We need to have a class analysis to have a good feminism, and I think we have to understand that people who are perceived as feminism are perceived as feminine in some way are treated in a certain set of ways by patriarchy, and basically all men can do is just be aware of all those things and not do them. just not do them. Just treat everyone like equally, with an acknowledgement that people who are perceived as feminine and treated in unequal ways by patriarchy will have this extra burden that they, should be supported through until patriarchy is fully fucking ended. And like this term feminized people. Sorry, so to talk through the Stuart Hall idea a little bit more, one of the terms is problematized that you might have heard, and the way this news media loves to talk about problem populations and to highlight the problem of some group. For example, travelers, right, are often described as a problem to local communities, and this is the process of problematization, right? It's a subcategory of general stigma when a group is stigmatized, but specifically it brings things to a head. Like, this is the problem of this group. We have to deal with the problem of traveler settlements leading to more crime in areas or whatever, right? In the same way, I think that people get feminized by social context, by interaction. Nat would always say, still does when when this term comes up, would always say that, for example, black men get put into a bunch of feminized roles by society. For example, there are a lot of black men working in care labor in the Imperial Corps, and that's considered a feminine role. It's reproductive labor, even if it's paid, and that has a feminizing effect. Now it's a fringe case to point out not only is this not about essential characteristics inside of somebody, but also that it can affect someone overall less or in a different way. But yeah, I think that's the useful thing, is just for men to understand that there is just masculine gender presentation. If we're imagining the ultimate woke man here, our perfect white knight, he understands that masculine presentation is just one of the gender presentations, that it will result in him being treated differently by under patriarchy in a preferential way, and to do his best to correct course on that, like to use that privilege to help people who are not treated nicely by it. As for like a positive masculinity, it's just so silly. Sorry, to get back to the comment. As for like a positive masculinity versus toxic masculinity, it's just like, yeah, some men are more toxic than others, but like, and some men are nicer to be around and nicer to have in your life than others. But it's just like as soon as you start, unpicking any of the particular like qualities that makes this gender this, it immediately becomes astrology, you know? My partner was saying to me the other day how when butches and femmes write or speak on the topic of butchness and femness, they just always start naming abstract qualities that they prize as being like uniquely belonging to butches or uniquely belonging to femmes. And I think that's a very accurate observation. Okay, we've got this comment from Maruta B says, for anyone who is interested in beauty conventions and the beauty industry, check out House of Beauty by Arabelle Siccardi. Haven't been able to get my hands on it yet, but I've been following her writing for years, which you should also check out, so I'm sure it's great. She's really good at picking apart this space that a lot of us femme-presenting people occupy, where we feel both boxed in and liberated by beauty. That sounds really interesting. Jenny Azoth was appreciating my iron brew, and I wanted to share this to point out that I've got no iron brew today. I'm having to cut back on big carbonated drinks and cut back on stuff in general because the doctors say I have to lose a bunch of weight, and that's really healthy, is to like tell people that they have to lose weight really fast to meet criteria and jump through hoops. That's really good doctoring. It's good harm reduction either way. Jenny Azoth in chat meanwhile says, harm reduction armored van for maximum harm reduction. Princess Beck Knight, hello, welcome to the stream, lovely to have you here. Princess Beck Knight says, if you build the harm reduction van Mad Max style, you can ram as many Hitler cars as you want. Harm reduction monster trucks as hermeneutics. Okay, I like where this is going. I think that I see a positive desire to make vehicles that will remove the fascism from people's bodies. I was just saying on Tumblr, I think yesterday, there is a machine that removes fascism from people's bodies. It's called the AK-47. And that is a form of harm reduction. But I think that we want plurality of tactics. And so I think we should have probably the harm reduction van that has a nice cup of tea in it. It could be armored to protect it, maybe. And maybe the harm reduction monster truck, it has more of a can holder vibe, I guess is what I'm getting at. More things are strapped down. There's more of an expectation of a bit of a roller coaster. Okay, so yes, no iron brew today. But Jenny also said in this other comment, I have to admit I'm very bad with needles, but using an insulin pen might actually be a workable solution. Thank you. Yes, they're very cool. They're just very, very cool. And I've had to recently adjust my dosage, also because doctors are really good at harm reduction, and I'm really pissed off about it. And I've always found adjusting dosage really difficult previously when it's not been like a nice round number in a syringe. But with insulin pens, you can just click it. It's great. Hermeneutics subscribed, thank you so much, and said got an ad because I forgot to resubscribe and was so affronted. I'm sorry that happened to you. Thank you so much for subscribing now. Everyone, if you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer or donate directly using command TIP. That is command !TIP in chat. And I keep forgetting to set up Throne, but someone suggested setting up Throne to me recently. It might have been Vord. And I think that's a good idea because I had a lot of people tell me that they have payment processing issues on PayPal. And there's also just like a bunch of mundane shit for the house as well as like equipment for filming. I've talked before about wanting to get a new camera. That's That would be a very expensive thing, to be clear. But just like a bunch of shit that like I would love to list on there and would be, yeah, like great to have. So I might do that, I'm intending to do that, and then people can buy me Christmas presents directly, but probably not literally Christmas presents because I'll probably not remember to do it until 2026. Okay, so we have looked before at The Economist. We have looked before at The Atlantic, some at The Guardian, and we have encountered several times now the New York Times. Ross Douthat's podcast, Did Women Ruin Everything? Did Women Ruin My Boner? Women pulling down my pants and laughing at me. Sorry, just checked, and the title actually is Did Liberal Feminism Ruin the Workplace? Was quite atrocious. Hopefully people here remember that Ezra Klein is also New York Times. I always kind of sort him into The Atlantic in my mind, and I'm trying to challenge that a little bit for myself because I want to like understand what's going on here better. This is how seriously I take the study of liberal slop, by the way. I was going to do an Economist stream again this week. I was perusing the printed magazines in Big Tesco, as I love to do because I love to torture myself. By I mean, look, sometimes I'll go into like Vanity Fair and they'll have like yes, an interview with Mamdani, but they'll also have like home decorating tips this Christmas for what's tacky and what's classy, and I'll enjoy that greatly. But what I'm mostly drawn to, like a moth to a flame, is terrible takes by terrible liberals. And I was looking at The Economist, and I just got to tell you, there were a bunch of fucking bangers. Like, seriously, there were a bunch of bangers that we all would have really enjoyed. But this is how seriously I take the study of liberal slop. I would like us today to analyze and understand the New York Times. We're not going to do those bangers in The Economist. We must understand. We must know our enemy. I think that, like, I've been really struck by every time I've remembered Ezra Klein is not with The Atlantic, he's with New York Times. Because it's this bizarre thing what his position is. Like, this clip that I'm completely obsessed with. I was actually explaining it to a friend the other day. We went to see Begonia and we were chatting beforehand about Ezra Klein. And we watched a bit of that interview. We might watch it back, actually, just now to like start things off. That interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates, it's just like this question of what Ezra's role is that leads to him not knowing what his role is. It's an intriguing one. It's an intriguing one. This is my Benoit Blanc mystery that I need to get to the bottom of. What the fuck actually is Ezra Klein's role? What does it mean for Ezra Klein to be Ezra Klein? And I think that to understand why that's compelling, firstly we have to think about Ross Douthat. In the interview, we were watching back the Ta-Nehisi Coates interview. This is what it's like to hang out with me, by the way. I was thinking recently about like how the appeal of streaming content is like hanging out with someone, and about like what's nice about hanging out with people and what's good activities to do. You know, that's why gaming streaming is so popular. It's like hanging out with a friend who's gaming. Which also, like, commenters and chatters, let me know if you'd like to see me game sometime. Anyway, I was thinking it's like hanging out with people, and in real life I do actually go and watch the Ezra Klein interview with friends and talk about what the fuck is going on here. This is just how obsessed with liberal slop I am. He mentions in the podcast, though, that his colleague, Ross Douthat, just had him on his podcast and they were just chatting recently. He was talking about this in that Work of Politics section. And it really struck me like, fuck, that's why it's so weird to me that Ezra works for the New York Times, because he's such an Atlantic caliber writer like the flavor of his takes, the style of the takes, everything. He's done so much promoting AI. The Atlantic has apparently partnered with AI now, with OpenAI now. So for him and Ross Douthat to be in the same publication, for Ezra to appear on the same podcast that then has "Did Liberal Feminism Ruin the Workplace" on it, that's that's something kind of special about how he understands himself and the world and his place in it, which, like, on the one level we're very familiar with, right? It's the centrist liberal brain, the moderate brain. It's about compromise, it's about working together. But I think it's important to also, like, imagine his ontology. Imagine very literally, like, the world that he occupies in his mind. For understanding properly, like, how he is, what his role is, how he is failing at that role, how he has lost his way in this, and the recognition is, like, a bit of a step, right? He's the first step is admitting you have a problem, Ezra. Mule, oh my goodness, hey Mule, welcome to the stream. Mule says, please, AI bubble, bring down the Atlantic too. Whispering to the Atlantic shareholders, demand investment in AI. Right. I think we should watch a little bit of that podcast back, just to cover at least the bit where he says about Ross Douthat, because that was fascinating to me. But that section is about the work of politics, so it's very much about here it is, Ezra's role, and this is all around the question of, or the bit where Ezra says that he doesn't know what his role is anymore. Okay. I'm gonna switch to my softest voice and have lots of pauses where I make mouth sounds and breathe carefully and generally get in the New York Times podcast vibe. No, I'm not gonna do that, by the way. That's horrible.
Oh, you're kind of getting this spilling out of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is a work of politics that, for a bunch of different reasons, has become demeaned. And I think, and this does not speak well of the people, so to speak, in power.
Why is it out of sync, the audio? I'm going to try refreshing it. Middle-earth Marxist says, hello to all abundance heads. Yes, this is another crucial thing that we'll dig into at some point.
Pro-choice, but she votes for Mitch McConnell.
This is another thing we'll get into at some point, is Ezra Klein's abundance.
Yes, the substructure of a bunch of what I am saying, which may or may not be in argument with you. It's just, right. When I texted you to come on, I was like, I've been thinking about what the underlying arguments are here. Mm-hmm, so you're kind of getting this spilling out of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is a work of politics that, for a bunch of different reasons, has become demeaned. And I think, and this does not speak well of the people, so to speak, in power doing it, but I think that they are not doing it well. I think the culture around them, I think politicians are not always leaders. I think they're often followers. And I think that the idea that kind of political coalition building across these gigantic differences, building across public opinion, both not just as you wish it existed, but as it exists, has become, seen and like treated as often betrayal, cowardice, moral fallibility. It's not, I think it's fine to say people got different roles. And in fact, it's good for intellectuals to criticize the politicians. But my view is that the political practice became too weak. I don't think that was true for Obama. I went back preparing to talk to you and I read your piece, My President Was Black.
Yeah. Before we get into that piece a little, I think I'm going to be coming back to this interview for years, probably. I am fascinated by Ezra Klein saying he doesn't know what the point of him is anymore. it's so good. And this whole preamble about about the work of politics, where he's starting to like define what he really thinks is like the essential work of politics, as he puts it. It's also good. What do I want to say about it? The idea of building a consensus, that's part of it. At the same time, like moving people in the right direction when opinion might not follow you. Like, he is describing around the edges. He is circumscribing a beautiful machine of politics that he imagines and he would like to work really, really well. And when he gets to his thing about like, I'd like to be a guy who writes takes in political peacetime. I'd like to just have funny little takes on stuff. Again, he wants to be Eamon Holmes. It's Eamon Holmes, I mean, right? Oh shit, I think I confused him with the other. He wants to be writing little takes that are just like don't really matter very much. B-Rat says hey B-Rat, welcome to the stream. B-Rat says he wants to be a West Wing writer. Yes, he definitely like in a way that I saw like Star Trek and wanted to be an astronaut. This man saw the West Wing. Adrian Chiles is who I mean. He wants to be Adrian Chiles, but have like takes about politics, but then just be like funny little curiosities. He wants to have the Adrian Chiles style, like, why are people wearing their belts higher recently? Has anyone noticed this? But it'd be about like, people are wearing their belts higher because the aesthetic trend of neo art deco is back, and that means this maybe for our society, or maybe it doesn't, and it wouldn't matter if it didn't. Whee! That's what Ezra wants his job to be. Anyway, I just love this. I am going to be writing something soon, which I've called What If You Threw a Rapture and Nobody Came? And Ezra is going to feature very heavily in it because it's about the mood of 2025 politically, and I think that I'm so obsessed with this, like, I don't know what my role is anymore, bit, because it summarizes so much so well.
I don't think that was true for Obama. I went back preparing to talk to you, and I read your piece, My President Was Black.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece.
Thank you.
And it's very much in this tension, right? Where you say quite a bit, like, it would have been a bad idea for Barack Obama to say the things I am saying here.
Yeah.
To do the things in some ways I wish he had done. It would have been, that politics wouldn't have worked. There would have been no Obama presidency, and his presidency would not have been successful. And I think I've been thinking about that line, right, in my own work and just in the political culture as I see it, that line between the sort of intellectual, analytical work and the actual like work of politics, the how do we live here with each other work.
So something important about what I'd like to discuss today and how the New York Times works and some of Ezra Klein's role in it is this idea that he's highlighting here with Coates's article about Barack Obama, where he's saying that Barack Obama needed to be more moderate for there to be certain wins for like black empowerment in America to progress via having a black president. Like, Obama needed to be seen as non-threatening to some parts of white America in important ways. And there's some truth to that. It's a complicated issue. Like, he did not need to do tons more drone strikes than George W. Bush. I don't think that's actually, like, defensible. But he needed to be in many ways normal, and being, like, too many unusual things at once, too much of a challenge to a system, automatically steps over into being revolutionary. And if you're going to be revolutionary, you have to own that, and you also have to be ready for what that means in terms of your ability to influence mainstream politics in this sort of op-ed takey way, and for what you're going to need, so for how much more you're going to need to achieve your goals, basically. Hummus rules. Okay. Hello, welcome to the chat. Great username. This is your first time chatter here. Hummus rules. Okay, says the one scene from West Wing that's seared in my mind is the one where they said we can't provide generic African country HIV medication because they can't read time. Apparently, yes. I also always go back to this scene. It's just quite astonishing. Just the sympathetic, tragic, liberal reality that West Wing is trying to get across to you is just kind of racist on the face of it. It's also just if a country were so poor that they don't have any wristwatches, firstly, wristwatches do not cost that much compared to pharmaceuticals. You could give them all wristwatches. Secondly, if they're so poor they don't have wristwatches, they don't have any kind of means of telling time. A medication that needs to be taken 5 times a day doesn't actually need to be taken precisely on the hour or whatever. You can probably do a pretty good job of taking it at 1/5 of the way through the day, and that would be a pretty frequent amount to have to take a medication. It's so stupid. Okay, let's carry on with Ezra.
Right, which
Oh, sorry. No, my point about Coates' thing is that Coates was saying, as Ezra summarized it here, and the author of the piece is right there nodding along, so we have to say it's a fair summary, that there's Obama and there's Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Obama needs to say more moderate things to be acceptable in the mainstream political machine, and Ta-Nehisi Coates needs to say more radical things. It's the concept of the radical flank, right? People talk about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and yes, there need to be people who are further out, pulling things in some direction at the fringe, and there need to be people who are hooked into the mainstream, pulling in the same direction for there to be this traction, hopefully. And that is one effective theory of change. If you live inside of the takes machine and you live inside of the marketplace of ideas, that is one way you could imagine politics and society. And it's useful to know that Ezra does imagine politics and society that way.
I think is actually honorable work. And I think feels right now to me morally urgent and necessary. And not just over disagreement, just the whole thing being done in a strategic and disciplined sense. I think one of the things I've thought about is the need to actually raise the status of just old-fashioned politics. And I think I've been surprised to find myself feeling that way. But I think one way the second Trump term has changed me.
A brief thing we can say about this is raising the status as meaning a sort of gatekeeping this thing for the people who are really equipped and qualified to do it is just not gonna work. It just doesn't. That's not real. That's completely imaginary.
I don't, and maybe you always believe this, right? I'm not putting this on you. I think what got built, for all of its flaws in the back half of the 20th century, was much more fragile than I'd understood. Not just the legislation or any of that, but the actual sense of what you could and could not do, what we would and would not accept. And I've just the sense that we could just tumble all the way back has become much more real to me. And so the work that people did to begin to build those guardrails and how hard that actually was, and the disappointment we eventually felt, I feel like we began to take something actually quite beautiful for granted, or only see what wasn't there as opposed to what was. And it's forced a little bit of, for me, how did they do it?
So here he's saying that we got too focused on what wasn't there instead of what was. We weren't appreciating the wins that had been gained. We weren't appreciating how far we had come to the left already, and seeing us lose ground and go to the right. Again, I've been saying this like for the last few weeks, but like this man believes in the Overton window. He believes that the Overton window is like the model that you need to understand the world through. It's a core part of his ontology. And if people aren't familiar with this word, and when I keep on saying it, we're talking about like how someone understands the world, their mental model of existence, the way that they make meaning. If you've heard the like story of the elephant and the people reaching around in a dark room, and someone says they found a pillar, and someone says they found a snake, and someone says they found a spear, and someone says that they found a big wall, and someone says that they found a rope that's swishing back and forth. But it's an elephant, right? This is part of what I mean, is just that like for Ezra, like the way he's understanding the elephant in the room, the way that he's understanding politics is this thing where we're all like together engaging in like civil debate, right? And this is the crucial idea of the marketplace of ideas, like that we are in like the Greek, what was it called, the agora, is that the right name? We're Ezra Klein and Russ Douthat are like Plato and Aristotle, and together they are on a search for truth. Oh my goodness. They're truth-seeking. This idea, like, rather than understanding politics as, like, in some senses a treaty between people who would otherwise be literally at each other's throats, is immediately a failure. But, maybe to some degree he does understand that idea, but it's just like, you also have to understand so many other ideas, like how the working class is like manipulated into being more Hummus Rules says the material world bends around great men and their great ideas. Yes, absolutely. You have to understand so many more things, like, for example, how bigotries are not just stoked, but, like, created in a divide and rule strategy by the ruling class in the working class. And, like, forces like that, maybe you can, like, squish it to fit into, like, an Overton window style of politics. Like, where did all these guys who feel this, like, really urgent, like, right-wing, like, misogynistic position on something, where do they all come from? Like, yeah, they were stoked by the media into expressing those beliefs and acting on them and so on, and now the Overton window has moved over there or whatever, but the more things you have to tack on, the less sense it makes. And the underlying thing here is that like a class analysis would help him understand everything about what's going on so much better. Both that and like an understanding of, I think, all the politics he's describing has to do with a very high level social contract, like a contract of high-minded debate about what democracy, society, academia to some degree, all facets of society should be doing and should be about, and so on. And being invested in that contract in the first place, I watched quite a good video recently where someone who, she is from an immigrant family to the US and was talking about Jubilee. I can't remember her channel name right now, but she was talking about like how she had a very good description of something underlying here that I think people in my chat especially will have had a lot of frustration with this, like the concept of like high-minded debate where one person is expressing a belief that treats the other person as not human or is otherwise incredibly violent to the other person. Her point, and I really liked this, it was just so succinct, was like, once that's there, like, that's not a debate, that's a fight. And that's just such a good way to put it. Like, once that's there, like, once someone comes in and is saying, like, trans women aren't women, or why don't you go home, or whatever, if someone's in there calling themselves a fascist, like, you are in a fight then. That you are, as soon as you've got someone who is expressing a belief that, like, does not. You have to have people whose worldview aligns close enough for them to have a discussion, and trying to fit these conversations that define and break social realities. That's too big. Yeah, and I think that again, that breaks down the concept of the Overton window, and you need a class analysis instead. Because, for example, if people who can get abortions, people who might need abortions, people who can get pregnant, is what I meant to say, as a class, materially, are being denied bodily autonomy, they will need to organize to secure access to this thing for themselves in whatever way they can, and only by being organized can they totally assure their protection in that way. The same for trans people. Speaking of bodily autonomy, if you were to have a solidarity on this axis, people fighting together to have this kind of medical bodily autonomy, them running their own clinics, trans people and people who need abortions running clinics together to provide these stigmatized medical services, that would be the most secure, in a sense, that those people could be in relation to that medical autonomy, because they would be in charge of it, just literally directly. And that's about forming structures as human beings so that you can be free. The right, meanwhile, wants, by various different metrics, to get a big stick and hit you with it until you tell them that their view of the world is correct and act in the way that they want you to act. And that's broadly the imperial core, right and left. And the right is just this Frankenstein's monster of the ruling class, working class people who have been manipulated and lied to and exploited, and then had their exploitation blamed on the wrong people. They are just this this internal cannibalization of the working class. And I think all of that is necessary to have I don't imagine that my view of politics is perfect, but I think all of that is necessary to have a tall, sensical view of politics. And it's not the same reality that Ezra lives in.
How did they get out of the last one of these?
I'll just say,
Coates is so tired throughout this whole interview.
and I think I'm speaking for a broader community here. We are not happy, but we are not surprised, man. And again, the reason why we go back to Reconstruction and the Civil War is because it is, before the 1960s, the only glimpse at the possibility of a real democracy in this country. And it happened. And in some places, it was actually quite successful. You have people who, had been enslaved, who are written off as illiterate fools, who are, serving in legislatures. And actually, with the standard of the time, actually, it's such a hopeful, incredible story. It's a beautiful thing. And it was violently destroyed. Once you see that, and once you have that in your heritage, once you, understand that, once you understand that Martin Luther King could be standing up, telling his own people, we do not embrace violence at all. It is morally repugnant. We embrace love. And that could get you shot. Not burn it down. Love can get you shot. You just have a different view of your country. It is not, I emphasize this over and over again, it is not a fatalistic view. It is not, it is written in stone that we will ultimately lose, but you understand that losing is a possibility.
But so then what does that...
He's so fucking real for this. And to be clear, he is absolutely rocking Ezra's shit. This stuff is too challenging to Ezra's basic perception of the world, which is leading to the crucial moment.
There's a Buddhist meditation I like. This is a weird place to go. But it goes like this. I'm of the nature to grow sick. I'm of the nature to grow old. I'm of the nature to lose the people I love. I'm of the nature to die. How then shall I live? And
Love that.
yeah, I do it because sometimes you need the reminder.
Yeah.
What I hear you saying in a way is we are of the nature too.
Yeah.
And I think the place I'm trying to push is then how then shall we live? Because
I am of the nature to slop. I am of the nature to have takes. I am of the nature to promote AI. I am of the nature to spout capitalist gibberish against observable reality. I am of the nature to promote pro-life, anti-abortion Democrats. How then shall I write my column? You know, that's the big question. How then?
this distinction you're making between, like, you would have been there correctly yelling at FDR. And I'm not like asking you, but like me, right? Like my work, my role.
Can you answer that? Can you say what you? I think it's a good point. Would you define for me how you see like what your role is?
I don't know what my role is anymore.
Oh god, there's just so much going on. There's just so much going on. Yeah, okay. So I think this is an important time for us to have this intervention into like what is the New York Times doing? Because I think that Ezra understands himself as just like strapped to this thing that is hurtling to the right. And, you know, if Ezra is like the left of center guy and Ross Douthat is the right of center guy, like it's not Ross Douthat's incredible mind that is powering this like shift, right? We know this. It is greater forces. But if Ezra were to have the effect that he needs to have, rather than do the job that he wishes he got to do, which we should carry on watching because it is very funny what he says. But like, I think what he would need to be is like a modern Diogenes to the marketplace of ideas. He would have to be a cynic and a skeptic and a troll and just rock everyone's shit with the most like radical possible stuff. I was talking earlier with my wife about the possibility of like, what if they got rid of Ezra Klein and the left wing, you know, the left wing guy at the New York Times was Slavoj Žižek, right? And just like every time that they are writing some slop about you know, free market solutions to whatever, about America's defense spending or whatever, they've just got like one of the most famous communist philosophers in the world alive today. Just like he is one of their guys that people come to their publication for his takes. That would have an overall effect on like, you know, New York Times culture, surely. But I think that when we talk about affordances, and I've said this a little bit on stream before, but to recap, affordances are a relationship that exists between you and your environment, or between you and an object in a design philosophy sense. So a cup with a handle affords being picked up by its handle, but a cup that is light enough for me to pick up affords being picked up in general. And there are properties of the cup, and there are things I can do, but the two combined make affordances. And like a room that has doors, you could say it affords leaving, but it also matters who goes in the room. If they can't see that the doors are there, then to them, the room does not afford ever leaving. And that's it for Ezra Klein. Like, I don't know if he would get fired if he saw the holy light of Marxism-Leninism tomorrow and started reading a ton on psychoanalysis and growing his beard out a little bit and putting on some weight and getting real sloppy and eating two hot dogs at once that he found in a dumpster and just transforming into Slavoj Žižek like Tim Allen in the Santa Claus. I don't know if he would get fired, but assuming that he wouldn't, because again, like, he's one of the guys they come to for his takes at the New York Times. He is a respected public intellectual. I think that would have an effect on New York Times culture if he was like trollish and unrepentantly like rude and irreverent towards the right wingers there, and just showed them basically no respect because they're fucking idiots, like because they're imperialist stooges. If he could see that and also was unafraid to say it, yeah, that might make a difference. But I think that door is invisible to Ezra. I think that he can't see that door, and therefore it does not afford exiting through.
I'll be totally honest with you, man. I feel very conflicted about that question.
The way the veins are popping in his head when he said this, just like precious.
The role I want to have is a person curiously exploring his political and intellectual interests in political peacetime. And the role I somehow have is sometimes that.
Coates, that Coates just did, like he's thinking about like, fuck, dude, it is rough that you that you wish that was you. Morgana XXX says, what door I'm not following? I'm saying that if Ezra Klein were to be the person that is needed in his understanding of like shifting the discourse at the New York Times, if he were to be the best version of the role that he is in, it would require for him to be someone very different. And I think that becoming that person is invisible to him. It's like a door that you can't see in a room. You can't get out of the room, even though you could technically just walk out, because you can't see the door there.
But I am in the business. I'm a political opinion writer and podcaster and so on. And I'm in the business of political persuasion. And I feel like me and the people who believe what I believe, not narrowly speaking, but, you know, like the whole broad coalition, have failed in a really consequential way. And I think it is.
You feel like you failed in your work.
I think I.
Okay, let's watch that back, because that's just, I love that so much. Just watch Ta-Nehisi Coates' face.
Have failed in a really consequential way. And I think it is.
You feel like you failed in your.
It's really good. But that point about the coalition, I've actually, my wife and I have had a bit of a back and forth about who the coalition is exactly in this statement, because she's saying, and I think this is very core to Ezra's worldview, that it's the coalition across the aisle, and I've been saying that I think that it's a coalition of people who broadly have left of center or progressive views, and I don't totally know how to factor in like people with actually leftist views into this, because Ezra, like so many liberal slop writers, works so hard against socialism all the time that like works so hard against socialism all the time that he surely doesn't consider himself to be in a coalition with the most respectable socialists, but like, you know, Bernie, AOC, Mamdani, right? But anyway, sorry, to get the full context on what he said.
Eldon believe. And I feel like me and the people who believe what I believe, not narrowly speaking, but, you know, like the whole broad coalition.
Right, so I think that's like people, basically, Ezra and leftward of Ezra. And I think that's like, part of the thing for me is like, how does this man feel and think about the world, understanding himself as the most right wing of that coalition of left wing people? Like, if you're the most not that political position of the coalition organized around that political position that there is, And certainly when a whole huge number of people in that political project are like, we can no longer work with the other side of politics anymore. They are something hideous and anti-life. And you're incapable of hearing that. And that's just bizarre to me.
Have failed in a really consequential way. And I think it is.
You feel like you failed in your work?
I think there are places I failed. I mean, I think there are things I got right too. Like, I think we shouldn't have run Joe Biden again. I think I was right about that. I think I've gotten a lot right, but I think I've gotten definitely things wrong. But I think we are here now, right? That's what I would really say. And it is forcing me to rethink things I would prefer not to rethink. I will give you an example because people are mad at me on this one right now.
Please.
I said in a podcast with my colleague Russ Douthat, he was pushing me on left radicalism. I was saying, I don't care about left-wing radicalism. I don't think it's some great threat. I don't think it's a huge political problem. I worry about left-wing pessimism, fatalism, that we are losing and don't want to change anything. And I said that the question for me is, how do we win Senate seats in places like Kansas and Missouri and Ohio? I said, I would like to see us doing things like in red states, and here I meant redder than those, running pro-life candidates. People got real upset about that, and I get why.
Prince Infidel in chat saying, with all due respect to Mamdani, Cortez, and Sanders, they're barely socialist even, but maybe I'm gatekeeping. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they are the most respectable to a system that is rotten to its core vision of, like, a kind of humanist politics. Like, we have... In the imperial core, we have an anti-human politics. Like, we really have a politics that is centered around a bunch of assumptions that just disregard human life altogether. And, yeah, like people who are within that framework trying to present humanist politics as respectably as possible. Yeah, like, they're not radical. Not by my metric, but that's electoralism for you.
But in 2010, when the Affordable Care Act passed, there were 40 House Democrats who were pro-life at some level. You had to do this whole negotiation with this guy, Bart Stupak.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And on the bright side, you don't have to have those negotiations now, and on the downside, you can't pass the Affordable Care Act. And the point is not that issue, right? That one issue, although things like, the example, say, Susan Collins, where she's in theory pro-choice, but she votes for Mitch McConnell and John Thune as leader. Right. Like, that's how you build power on some level, right? If you have those, Joe Manchin, like, I wish he were still a senator from West Virginia, as much as I have deep disagreements with him. I think that I am a person, I think you are a person, whether you admit it or not, who is one of the people with a, voice in shaping what our political culture is. And I believe at some level that political strategy is downstream from political culture. I think it means exploring things.
Downstream is also an interesting part of his worldview is communicated in a lot of metaphors here. And, like, downstream is an interesting one. Political strategy is downstream of political culture. Like, Mule in chat saying, I think I am a person. Wrongo bongo, buddy. It's true, Ezra is just a fucking automaton. Oh, Christ. Political strategy is downstream of political culture, meaning things that happen in culture therefore dictate, like, what people view favorably, and that views what will get passed. Again, we come back to the Overton window. It's just the Overton window again and again and again and again and again. It's Overton all the way down. It has to be you have to respect what public opinion is. And I'm like, and I get that he is talking inside the world of the takes machine. And he said the art of political persuasion is his job. His job is political persuasion and electoral politics. And so, like, I get the idea of public opinion in there. And sometimes, as he puts it, maybe he says this in a second, sometimes public opinion will not be what you want it to be. But it's like, then your job is to persuade people, firstly, like, rather than like giving them the evil fascist option because they believe the wrong, they believe the wrong thing and the lie, so you should just like do the wrong thing. Firstly, there's that. But then secondly, like, again, the most liberated and secure people whose bodily autonomy is like really stigmatized medically could be as if they ran their own medical clinics, right? And then like as a step down from there, having a strength of organization that makes sure that public servants, politicians, institutions, the government broadly, will not oppose them because they'll be in serious trouble if they do. And public opinion doesn't need to be the kind of serious trouble they'll be in. It doesn't. Often people are quite like free-floating in what they believe if they haven't freshly been propagandized a whole bunch. Which is why the news media is so important and why the liberal slot machine must always keep on cranking out slop. But people seeing, for example, like one way that you could affect public opinion with protest is like symbolic actions that bring attention to an issue. You can also highlight, like, you can also talk about like the propaganda of the deed. Like you can say that like if a few people were running medical clinics to provide HRT, trans-related surgeries, abortion care, various stuff to do with like disabilities that are overlooked frequently by the state, like there would be, I think, a lot of people in the broader public who are like, oh, clearly those people care so much about that thing that they're just going to keep on doing it, and it would be better if the state was providing it safely. It would be able to leverage public opinion as opposed to changing public opinion. And these are very real things that exist outside the ballot box that a writer can also talk about. And I know because I am one who does. You can actually not just be about wonk brain, focus group brain, trying to make it so that when you ask the right questions, you get out the right statistically significant answers, or whatever. You actually can have a politics that is both practical and rooted in like not embracing compromises with fascists
that are uncomfortable and being pretty disciplined in a way maybe I haven't been.
By the way, everyone, if you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. I am doing work right now, and it's nice when I get paid for doing work. So please consider tipping with command tip. That's !TIP. If everybody here, there's like 50 people watching, if everybody here tipped like £2 right now, I would have a very Merry Christmas. But any amount is appreciated from everyone who wants to support the stream. You can also subscribe or cheer. If you have a Prime subscription, you can give me a free subscription where I get real money, but you don't pay any extra money if your Prime account and Twitch account are linked. Okay, let's carry on.
About separating the question of what I believe from what I believe will win power.
Oh, sorry to pause again so immediately, but Hummus Rules OK has a great message here. The message says, if no one ever runs on policies that are supposed to be outside the window, how can you know where the edge of the window actually lies? Yeah, and I think that's like another thing, like the simplest way we can articulate the breakdown of the Overton window perspective on politics that Ezra has is if we imagine people, as they are right now, running on policies that are like the Stop Furries Act. We have to stop all of the cat litter boxes that are in our children's classrooms at the moment, and we need to replace them with Kevlar shielding so that the kids will be able to climb into a box while their AR-15 trained teacher shoots a school shooter if a school shooter comes through. If one person's running on this policy and another person's running on like we should have better subsidized healthcare and free public transport because this will make everyone's lives better. And even from an economic perspective, it's been thoroughly proven that this will definitely improve the economy if everyone is able to get to work and healthier. You will see a lot of people voting for those policies in a political time where the system is materially failing a bunch of people. Because when people are let down, they want change. And the direction they want change in has at least as much to do with what is offered to them as what they think. I actually think like what people think in this public opinion sense is actually a much trickier concept than people would like it to appear as. But if there were people running with those, two different candidates running with those policies, both of them would get more votes than they have done in previous years, compared to a guy whose politics are like, we should stop, we should have serious investigations into whether the furrification surgery is safe for children before regulating trans healthcare. And also, we should subsidize public transport 1% more than last year so that we get some of the economic benefits of helping people without actually lowering any of the ticket prices. This person is able to say all that stuff and then say, I'm doing grown-up politics. And grown-up politics represents the incumbent system, the politics that already exists. It's realism to do this stuff. And that works great when people are fed and not very interested in politics because they're able to afford food. And then when they start running out of food, the guy who says it's the immigrants taking your food and the guy who says it's the billionaires taking your food and trying to trick you into thinking it's the immigrants, they both get more popular than the guy who was saying, I'm doing grown-up daddy politics. Thank you so much, Jenny Azoth, for tipping £2 and saying, I'll get the donation train started. Come on, everyone. That's really sweet. Thank you so much. Okay, we're carrying on with this. We're going to come to the end of this clip of what I wanted to look at here soon, because the point of the stream today is I really want to look at not Ezra Klein, nor Ross Douthat. We might do some more Ross at some point, but hopefully not. Because these are the two great interlocutors, obviously. This is Aristotle and Plato, in the marketplace of ideas. But I think looking at the marketplace itself is more important. So I've actually lined up a few different New York Times pieces for us to read through today.
Because I currently think that the cost of losing power is horrifying and dangerous, and we can't keep doing it. So that's where my head is.
Incredible and shocking political insight from Ezra that no one has ever come up with before. Losing power sucks, and your enemy gets to do a bunch of stuff, and that sucks.
Because immediate thing, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the immediate thing that springs to mind for me in that question is not who you're abandoning, but how do you square the fact that, in fact, reproductive rights.
Wendy has tipped £5 and says, slop liberation now. Thank you so much, Wendy. I really appreciate that.
Has proven to be pretty popular in red states. And I'm thinking about referendums that have been passed such that they've had to, change the rules. Like, how do you separate that?
I sort of said this in play.
Like, there are people who didn't vote for Kamala, but give me my reproductive rights.
I think that I was using first pro-life as an illustrative example, but there are many red districts.
It sucks so bad. Speaking of debate, I've done some debating, some formal debating, but I try not to focus on it too much because I think it's like the actual ideas that I'd rather discuss as a first thing, and as a second thing, the structure of ideas, and the rhetoric is somewhere between those and kind of less interesting than both. But it sucks so bad as a rhetorical response that he was like, here's my example, run pro-life Democrats. And Ta-Nehisi Coates says, how do you deal with the fact that Republicans actually do want abortions and do actually know by now, they have actually realized that abortions are good and do want them. And And Ezra just goes, okay, well, it was just an example. And it's just like, are we just going to do this all day?
In this country. And there are states that we do not even think about competing in anymore, right? I'm not talking about Ohio here. I think you have to try things. By the way, not only moderation kind of things, you could try going much harder on economic populism, which some people are trying. I think you might need to combine those two strategies.
What if we try to compromise where we try to policy that inconvenienced straight white men? I just like you have to be willing to compromise on some stuff. Okay, how about it's stuff that affects you, Ezra? Like how about it's stuff that affects you instead of stuff that affects other people who aren't you, where you get to talk completely abstractly about it?
Right, which is sort of the Dan Osborne in Nebraska approach. I think that I think even before the question of what your policies are, and I believe this very deeply, there's a question of whether or not people feel like you respect them and like them, even if they disagree with you. Before, I think people will give you power, they don't even ask, do they like you? They ask whether you like them. And I think a lot of the country feels we don't like them. Not only do I believe that, I know that. I've seen the focus groups. I've seen the survey data. I've talked to...
Have you looked at your behavior and seen what might have given them all the impression that you don't like them? Because it's pretty obvious, I think, to everyone, including people who, like... I am very engaged in the world that Ezra moves within, and it seems to me like he doesn't like people.
The people work on this. And that's going to require changing that is going to require making moves that somehow send a loud enough signal that people begin to think we have changed it at some level. Sherrod Brown should be able to win in Ohio.
Yes.
The reason he cannot win in Ohio is the Democratic Party itself is a millstone around his neck that drags him down. So what do you do about I'm not here to tell you I got the answer.
Yeah.
What I would feel much better about is if I felt there was like a strategic discipline about finding it.
So I just if you will take this very gentle pushback.
Yeah, please.
I think
you're here for it.
I haven't seen exactly what people are saying, online in terms of this, but I do think like what immediately strikes me is if you take, I know you would just, it's not, the example necessarily that you would hold out, about reproductive rights, but I think the problem with musing about that is abandoning it is a very real possibility for people.
Hummus Rolls OK says he's talking about the aesthetics of a campaign again. Yeah, I think it's really relevant to point this out. Sorry, I'm just crunching up this cranberry juice cotton. It's very relevant to point this out, like, to this kind of person, like, stuff that the billionaires are doing to manipulate misinformation and control people, those are events and you can report on them. Stuff that activists are doing to stop Cop City or set up fucking breakfast centers for poor kids or medical clinics or marching in the street, resisting ICE raids, all this stuff, they're events and you can report on them. And you can't tell people, I think that more people should be doing this thing. You always have to be driving back towards the discourse and towards the marketplace of ideas and the respectability. Like, it all has to come back into civil discourse. It all has to fold back into civil discourse. Could he explain why he thinks that? Unclear. Completely unclear. But yeah, that is what he thinks. And it's just fascinating to me. Like, again, as someone who writes and in some ways does a similar-ish kind of thing to what Ezra does. I too am somewhat in the takes machine, but I use it to say, like, I think that the Just Stop Oil successor, Shut the System, is doing this thing well. I think that the Trans Direct Action Group, Bash Back, are doing this thing well, and this thing maybe less well. Like, it's... You can actually use your platform to, like, encourage people to change politics in ways that are honestly bigger than electoral politics. Electoral politics is like 1% of politics, actually.
who don't have the option necessarily to fly to another state or do X, Y, and Z. So I suspect when they hear somebody of your status, even if it's not the example you mean, putting it out in the air, like they feel, and it's not just that you're putting it out in the air, it's putting it out in the air, and actually, I don't necessarily even mean that one. No, like if you're gonna say that, I think you really gotta.
I'll stand behind
it.
You
gotta put the data behind it. I think that's really, really important.
I will say, and I think this is actually the nub of it, right? Okay. Like I'm glad we're sort of here. I am saying the thing it sounds like I am saying. Mm-hmm. To be very, very clear.
Right.
I think in a place like Nebraska, you should try to run some pro-life Democrats. I wish people, instead of saying that an expressive or strategic question in politics was betraying or abandoning the people we wish to protect, I wish what we said was we lost power.
Million Peaches, hello Million Peaches, welcome to the stream, it's lovely to have you here. Million Peaches says, but Sophie, have you considered vote? I can't remember which podcast it was I was listening to in the last few years, but this bit really stuck with me where someone was just saying, like, what I need you to do is get a piece of paper and write down Joe Biden on it and put a big X next to Joe Biden. And then you just do that as many times as you possibly can. And that's like their solution, their proposed action for people. And this really tickled me.
In a way that allowed Donald Trump to drive the Supreme Court to a 6-3 Republican majority. And that majority overturned Roe v. Wade. Right. It overturned Roe v. Wade and actually abandoned all these people. Right. Actually fucked them over. Right?
Right.
It is part of, I think, when I say that like the work of politics has become diminished, it is part of how that happened, that talking about this creates this sort of counter argument. Well, even to discuss it is to abandon. In 2008, as you and I both know, Barack Obama ran as a public opponent of gay marriage.
Right.
He ran opposed to it. Right. At a time when not only, I won't speak for you, was I not opposed to it, but most of us did not, most of us did not think he was opposed to it.
Right.
Middle Earth Marxist, thank you so much for tipping £2. That's another £2 we got from people. We're moving in the right direction. And Middle Earth Marxist said, let's make Bidenomics work. Yeah, let's do it. Remember everyone, if you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. If everyone donated just a little bit, I would probably take the money and buy my friends some presents, like tonight when I'm in bed watching a movie later. Actually, I've been rewatching Arrested Development recently, which is like a lot of silly fun and also some fucking clangers in there.
Like at his heart, we did not think he was opposed to it.
Right.
But he was playing politics. Right. That playing of politics allowed him to name Supreme Court justices, and that led to the decision that created a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. And I am saying that that kind of playing politics is needed.
I can give you an example from the other side, by the way, too.
Yeah, go for it.
Brother, you know what my position was during the election about Palestine, about Gaza.
Hummus Rules OK says, maybe one problem is the existence of an unelected juridistic elite that can override democratic will. Yeah. It's just that he is bought fundamentally into a myth of how America works, and all of us believe in untrue things. Like, we truly never can know what a perfect image of an apple tree looks like, not viewed through human eyes. Right? None of us can. In the same way, like, we just can never completely have, like, a totally working model of politics. No model is completely correct. Some models are useful. I heard this from someone who was defending the diagnostic model. And it's actually a pretty useful phrase. Sadly, learned it from a clinical psychologist. Hiss, boo. And Ezra's model used to be useful, and it's not useful anymore. Oh my goodness, Anonymous, thank you so much for tipping. The hacker named Anonymous, the hacker collective known as Anonymous, has tipped £17 with no message. Thank you so much. Very mysterious of you. Thank you so much.
Kamala Harris was running to be the first black woman to be president of the United States. You cannot imagine how animated black folks were. And some would argue the base of the Democratic Party, black women. You know, we're gonna, see this thing. She was not taking a position that I thought was particularly moral. I had to talk in front of black audiences about that. You know what I mean? And I had to do the other thing, which was go before Arab American audiences here, Palestinian American audiences here, and say, look, I'm with you. You can be mad at me. You probably will be mad at me. I get it. But for me, politics is the lesser of two evils. We've been fighting this battle for a long time. We have never had the luxury of electing people that represented the best of us. And this is why I'm voting for her. This is a really, really serious thing. And when you hear these Palestinian Americans, and when you hear these Muslim Americans, and when you hear these Arab Americans upset about this, you can't just yell at them. You have to take them seriously.
This is like, we're coming to the end of how much I want to watch of this before we go into the articles now. Some people will be cheering for that because I know everyone hates Ezra Klein. Coates sharing this perspective, I think, is very useful in us understanding stuff better here. Like, he felt it was so important to some people that he cares about to not get Trump in again, that he went to Palestinians and said, I'm sorry that I'm supporting a candidate who is supporting the genocide of your people. And again, there's what people want to do or think or believe, and then there's like what they feel they can do. And this is why I think affordances is a really important political concept. Ta-Nehisi Coates did not see the option to insist upon the Democratic Party changing its position on the genocide in Gaza. And maybe that option truly was not there for him and wouldn't have changed anything. But Trump did win. And so what we can say about Palestine, seriously, like clear cut, based on the numbers around Palestine, when the election happened, we can actually say pretty clearly that it was an issue that if the Democratic Party had taken the other position on, they would have won. And at that point, it's a party's job to reflect public will more than it's anyone's job to be like the pragmatic guy who says you just have to accept this thing. It's the only way to prevent further bad stuff from happening. When we're all watching a genocide take place in front of our eyes, not condemning it, not acting against it, and then saying that you have to like actively cast a vote in favor of a person who's endorsing that to prevent more harm as well is so hard. It's always hard to engage with harm reduction when you're seeing, and this is a harm reduction argument voting for Kamala Harris, right? Which is like a fascinating abstraction and perversion of what we're talking about when we're talking about like harm reduction in the context of like they both have a similar logical shape, driving around a van to give out needles, clean needle supplies to people so they don't overdose, and voting for Kamala Harris. But it's like, you then have to acknowledge that like the Democratic Party is like the drug people are addicted to that could kill them. And if we can make changes to that thing, we should as well. We should do both. All right, a little bit more of this. Tea break articles.
Hard, very, very difficult conversations. But when I made those conversations, look, man, I had to be buttoned up about it. I just think you
Hermes Roll's okay here saying, we need more shame as people. I think we have a lot of shaming as political tool going on, and it's kind of overstated at this point. I think we just need more direct action.
You take very, very seriously the need to convince people outside of the tent right now right? About like we have to convince them to come in. I guess what I want from you is I want you to take as seriously people who are in the tent and who are vulnerable and afraid. And if you have to convince them of something that's extremely, extremely uncomfortable, or tell them that you're taking a position that is extremely uncomfortable, I just think you owe them a little more. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
man.
That's fine. I'll take it. But I want to put this on you for a minute, right?
Sure.
You keep sort of putting it back on me.
Yeah, I'm open. Go ahead. I won't.
You keep putting it back on me here on the Ta-Nehisi Coates show.
Yes, right.
What then should we do? What then should be? You are one of the most influential public intellectuals in the country. I know you don't like to think of politics as a thing you do, but it is a thing you do. What, as bad as you know this can get, and given that you're not a hopeless person, or who, doesn't think you should just collapse into fatalism, what do you think should happen now?
I think that really depends on what your role is. I don't have a great overarching theory for what everybody needs to do, because I think we all have different positions. I know what my role is, and I do see myself as part of politics, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very, very important way of answering the question. I mean, I'm not going to be the person that yells at you because, you went on a bunch of right-wing podcasts. As I've said many times, in the course of this interview, I see myself as a writer. I see myself as a journalist. I see myself as someone for whom it's very, very important to state the truth plainly and to clarify things as best I can. I'm not a strategist for the party, and I've tried to, as you raised in that Barack Obama piece, I've tried to respect the difference.
I guess I'm not pushing you to be a political strategist, right? I think that for me, something you see me doing right here, something I think people reacting to me doing is saying, well, if the fight is this profound and we're losing the fight, then the question is to think about how we fight.
Right.
That's something about knowing that this much of the country is, on the wrong side of what my line would have been.
Right.
Knowing that what Kirk was doing, what people like him were doing, was working.
Right.
That imposes a set of questions upon us that need to be answered.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up there for this clip. I think that hopefully by the end of the stream, we will all have more productive answers on what Ezra's role is and how he could best be fighting, as he puts it, like what the most productive way would be for him to try and effect change from the position of his job. But for now, my immediate thought on it, and I'm open to thoughts at any time, basically, about Ezra Klein. But my thought immediately here is just like, once you realize that takes are fucking cheap, like they're just fucking cheap, actually, like to be one of the bozos hanging around, like stroking your chin and being like, yeah, I think the president should have done it like this. Yeah, the president should have done it like this, or whatever. Like, to be one of those guys, it's actually fucking cheap, and there is not as thin a window of stuff you can like get away with saying as anyone thinks. You could say fucking anything you want, especially once you're already like salaried with the New York Times. That's a starting place for me. Okay, I'm going to put the music back on for a couple of minutes, make myself a new cup of tea. I'd encourage everybody else to also make a cup of tea or other hot drink you enjoy. And then we're going to read a series of articles. What are we going to be looking at? Today we are going to be looking at a variety of different pieces from the New York Times, because I want to not only understand Aristotle himself, Ezra Klein, and his role in the marketplace of ideas, I want to understand the marketplace itself, the Dinge an sich, the New York Times in itself. Let's look at troops involved in boat strikes face a moral injury risk. Tyler Robinson goes on trial. An opinion piece by Thomas L. Friedman. Trump isn't interested in fighting a new Cold War, he wants a new civilizational war. Trump signs executive order to neuter state AI laws. Historic shift underway in China's economy as investment slump deepens. And that will be a nice variety of topics, I think, for us to understand the New York Times properly. So there's lots coming up. Don't go away. Please make yourself a hot drink of whatever kind you like. And if you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer or donate directly using command TIP. That's !TIP. It's there in chat now. VOD watchers, if you're enjoying the VODs, please consider paying for the VODs. The link is down below. And also, you can also gift people subs here in Twitch for ad-free viewing. So we will be back in a couple minutes, and I think the perfect intermission screen after all that has to be this one. Just perfect. And I will see you all in 2 to 5, in the length of time to make a cup of tea. Okay. I've got my cup of tea. I hope everyone else does too. It's time for us to start looking at some slop articles. Yay! I'm so sorry for this. This is gonna suck so bad. We are about to start with troops involved in boat strikes face a moral injury risk, experts say. This is gonna be a really sickening one. Does anyone chat know what moral injury is? Because we're gonna be getting into it, but I'd love to hear people's like prior understandings of it. And as I've asked that, but please go ahead with typing your answers. My understanding of it going into this is that when something happens that changes how people, again, understand the world in a fundamental way. I guess Ezra Klein has suffered a moral injury, as it were. When things happen that challenge your like conception of the world really seriously, it can give you this like wound on your soul. Weirdo of Oz says, "Is it a boo-boo in your Jesus place?" I think the most important thing we can say about it before we go in is that compared to the injuries that were done to a bunch of Venezuelan fishermen who were just trying to earn a living, and then they were blown to pieces and they were clinging onto their boat trying to right way up the remains of their vessel, and then they were drone striked a second time and blown to smithereens, it's a lot less of a real injury. And it's quite important to say it's not real. I was just joking with Happy about this, like, fucking Sarge, my legs have been morally blown off. Those Venezuelans got us with a moral bomb, Sarge. They forced us to explode them. I'm not gonna morally make it. Something happens that challenges the way that you think about the world really deeply. Someone you trust a lot does something bad, and you thought they were a good person who does things that you think are good, and they do a bad thing. That's a moral injury. The institution you are a part of does something bad, right? Similar sort of super ego connection. Yes, what we're going to be talking about here is the moral injury of having to kill people when you know that's the wrong thing to do. If you're enjoying the stream, you know all the rest. Troops involved in boat strikes face a moral injury risk, experts say. Troops who play a part in deadly missions that they see as wrong or unjustified may suffer deep psychological harm as a result. Research has shown. Okay, let's do it. Dave Phillips says, the Trump administration's missile strikes against boats that it says are carrying drugs have drawn fierce criticism from legal experts and from some members of Congress who say that the killing of unarmed civilians in international waters is illegal and amounts to little more than summary execution. Congress has convened classified hearings, and legal groups have sued to force the administration to release secret memos authorizing the strikes. But amid all the high-level debate, little public attention has been given to how the strikes affect the low-level people who have to carry them out. Sorry, it's like, among the left, I am a voice often for like, we have to be understanding that the American military is the world's biggest welfare program and people join it all the time because they need to get a degree or whatever. But if you join the American military in the last few years and then you find yourself blowing a Venezuelan fisherman to smithereens and you don't refuse that order and you go through with it, I don't think I care. I think that's your business to deal with how you feel about that. And the New York Times giving this much column space to it is just inherently kind of disgusting. All right. Participating in killing, even killing seen remotely on a video screen, can leave deep psychological wounds and lead to long-lasting struggles. If the person perceives the killing as morally wrong or unjustified, the effect can be even greater. The Department of Veterans Affairs sees the problem often enough that it has a name: moral injury. It stems from feelings of intense guilt or shame that can lead to a number of psychological problems, including an increased risk of suicide. I am so close to saying a bunch of stuff that would get me banned off Twitch right now. It is amplified when the person feels betrayed by an institution or leader that they believed in. In the boat strikes, hundreds of military personnel could be affected. When the Trump administration orders a missile strike on a boat speeding across the Caribbean Sea, executing the order isn't as simple as having an admiral push a red button. There are intelligence teams using surveillance drones and satellites to track boat traffic, specialists to intercept radio and cell phone communications, and linguists to translate them, analysts to sift through intelligence for potential targets, and targeters to call for a strike on a specific boat. If the strike is carried out by an armed drone, there are sensor operators who aim the drone's targeting laser and a drone pilot who immediately launches the missile. The high-definition video footage is beamed to big screens in operation centers where command teams and their staff watch every move. All those troops, experts say, are at risk of psychological harm from participating in killings that they may see as legally dubious or morally appalling. Weirdo of Oz says, have we invented shell shock again? Did we invent the woke way to say PTSD? And I feel like I should draw attention to this to disambiguate if people are misunderstanding here. I think moral injury is a related concept to PTSD, but is not just that. Like, I think it's worth saying that, like, in the context that they're discussing it, like, doing things you think are bad leads to trauma. Like, that's an aspect of what could contribute to PTSD. Obviously, just like bad shit happening to you can also cause PTSD. But it's important to understand this one as, like, I had a friend who worked for the a US government agency that was involved in intelligence gathering, and at one time she claimed to me that she was responsible for the deaths of possibly thousands of people. And, like, that wasn't a trauma, like she was like looking in the drone viewfinder thing, seeing a bunch of people die or whatever, but to do with being part of a machine that she came to understand was doing such horrible things that she couldn't reconcile with her sense of self and her views on the world, right? That's a moral injury and isn't to do with so much a traumatic event as a wound to someone's understanding of the world. Similarly, it's also to bring moral injury into like a totally different context for a second. There were a bunch of very, very, very vicious, like, early breadtube discourses, like ContraPoint saying one thing or another. For a little while, every new video that ContraPoints was releasing, there would be like a Twitter storm of trans people who were angry because they felt like she hadn't said something the correct way. And I think that one thing that was really important in understanding the viciousness of what was happening there is trans misogyny. But another thing that's really important in understanding there is to do with people's identification with a creator that they like, and seeing that person as, like, in some sense related to them and sharing a moral compass. And then if they don't say the thing exactly like how this person wants them to be saying it, there's a sense of moral injury, this pain of separation away from someone you thought had the same values as you. And it would have served them well to understand that Natalie Wynn is just a middle-class American white liberal. It's not that surprising that she thinks a lot of things that she thinks. Yeah. She's certainly a lot less egregious than, say, Ezra Klein, right? Yeah, so, like, there are different contexts where moral injury is relevant to other stuff, and in this instance, it's relevant to yes, PTSD, but, like, I think it's probably more relevant in understanding in relation to, like, troop morale and their ability and willingness to cooperate with the American state, to be honest. What this feels like it's talking around, to me, more than PTSD, is, like, the possibility of dissent and mutiny. Prince Infidel says, so I know people who are in the military, all of whom deeply regret their part of being in the US death machine. I'm no expert, but their response is similar to PTSD, if not exactly that. Yeah, and that's completely fair. I'm just trying to explain it's a different thing that is relevant in different contexts in different ways. Killing someone is the biggest, most consequential moral decision a person can make, said Peter Kilner, who was an Army infantry officer for 15 years and then taught ethics at West Point. Oh boy. Quote, even in the best circumstances, it can be a heavy load to carry, and this is far from the best circumstances. Mr. Kilner, who has studied moral injury for more than 2 decades, said participants in the boat strikes might be at increased risk of moral injuries because of the remote control strikes against unarmed people appeared to fall short of what the military has long held to be moral, ethical, and legal. No service members have come out publicly with concerns, and there is no evidence that they've gone privately to members of Congress or other authorities. But Mr. Kilner says troops often express few misgivings in the heat of the moment. Quote, it can take hold much later after everyone else has moved on, he added. Quote, there is a deep feeling of being tarnished, unworthy. People can really struggle. Defense Secretary, that's the Secretary of War there, Dave. I think you've made a mistake there. That's actually the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, former infantry platoon leader, seemed to recognize the risk of asking troops to operate beyond ethical and legal boundaries in 2016 when Donald Trump was calling for the use of torture and the killing of terrorists' families as he ran for office. Quote, he says, go ahead and kill the families, Mr. Hegseth said on Fox News in 2016. Quote, go ahead and torture, go ahead and go further than waterboarding. What happens when people follow those orders or don't follow them? No evidence has come to light of widespread misgivings among the troops carrying out the boat strikes, nor are any of them known to have refused orders. Because the operations are classified, it would be illegal for the troops to speak out publicly about them. The troops who do this are trained to execute orders quickly with little discussion. Cool. The orders come from, quote, the customer, military jargon for whichever command authority requested the mission. For at least some of the boat strikes, the customer has been SEAL Team 6, which reports to Administrator Frank Bradley, the head of Special Operations Command, and to Mr. Hegseth. Military personnel have little, if any, say over the assignments they get or the orders they receive. Unlike civilians, they cannot simply quit their jobs. And in almost all circumstances, refusing an order is a crime that can lead to prison time. This article really is for what it appears to be for when you start looking at the article. Oh, Jesus Christ. So in terms of getting a flavor for what the New York Times is like so far, if we were going just based on this one, Ezra Klein is a massive fucking stooge. This is not a place that will have any room for any kind of left-wing opinion and bringing yourself here to debate in a high-minded way over and to engage in truth-seeking with Ross Douthat. Just embarrassing. Military personnel are allowed, and in fact obliged, to refuse illegal orders, but to do so would probably result in swift punishment, while determining the actual legality of the order could drag on in court for months or years, according to Brenna Fissel. Sorry, I am not encouraging this action. If anyone were to ever ask me if I thought this was a good idea, I'd tell them not to do it. But Aaron Bushnell was a fan of my content, a fan of Red Planet, a Patreon subscriber, a Twitch chatter sometimes, and a chatter with Red Planet and a Patreon subscriber as well. And Bushnell said, I refuse to be complicit in genocide, and then self-immolated. I think that if you sign up to be in the military and then the illegal order comes through, and then you have the choice between months or years in prison while they figure out whether you were right about the thing being illegal, or doing the war crime. Yeah, I think that ideally, and obviously a lot of people are coerced into the military, so they don't have like infinite time to consider things. But since there is an ethics class at West Point, maybe the ideal thing there would be to err on the side of not doing war crimes. And maybe the military should be more willing to say, yeah, this would have looked from the position this person was in like it was probably a war crime. So so even in cases where it wouldn't have been, maybe understand more there. But it's a military, it's kind of politically fascist by its nature, especially an imperialist military run by and for the ruling class. Anyway, Mule says, I was thinking about Bushnell today. Yeah, I think about Bushnell quite a lot. It's an intense thing to I remember someone being interviewed who was a personal friend and said they just made an effort. It started getting out to meet their neighbors and be involved in the local community was a huge starting point. And I was just like, shit, dude, that's Red Planet homework week 1. That's completely insane. And I know that it's also broadly widespread leftist advice, but it's just very striking. Vodrella says Legal Eagle did a video about this. Refusing an order means 2 years of jail while you wait for a military judge to take your case, who is probably going to rule against you. Yeah, a great reason to not join the military. But from the point of view that this writer is writing about how we structure society, maybe the best thing is for us to all be a little bit more anti-war crime in our actions as well as beliefs and stated opinions. Military personnel are allowed and obliged to refuse legal orders. Doing so would probably result in swift punishment, while determining the actual legality of the order could drag on in court for months or years, according to Brenner Fissel, a law professor at Villanova University. When a legally dubious order is given, he said, quote, the individual is in a horrible bind. If they refuse, they will likely immediately be charged with a crime, maybe put in jail. At some point, maybe a judge may realize they were right, but at that point, they have lost their job and become an outcast. There is a huge incentive to just obey, even if you deeply, deeply don't agree with what is happening. Mr. Frissell helps run the Orders Project, an organization that connects troops with independent lawyers who can advise them. Such groups say a small number of troops have contacted them with concerns, but none wanted to voice them publicly. The quick video clips of fiery missile strikes that Mr. Hegseth has posted on social media can make the operation seem like a video game. Military personnel see something much more real. The teams that manage airstrikes often watch potential targets for days beforehand. They may see a boat crew loading drugs, but they may also see them hug their children before casting off. Oof. Hummus Rolls OK says, has New York Times perchance written about the mental impact on the families of fishermen who are murdered by a foreign state? I'm just kidding, of course not. Yeah, it's very much one of those. The insistence upon empathy for the literal soldiers of the ruling class, it's fucking gross, actually. Also, there are times, I think, in your life when where your moral action has so much riding on it that, supposing that a judge would send you to prison, would rule against you and you'd get, sentenced, after, waiting for trial for a really long time with, just in prison. Supposing that is going to be what's going to happen, yeah, maybe you just gotta go with the bad for you but moral action there. At the same time, maybe, if society is worth living in, it's a society that will one day knock down the wall and free you as a political prisoner who, refused the order. Fuck, man. But again and again, just the insistence upon empathy for the children of the white world, the white Western world, and no empathy for anybody else. In the first boat strikes, 2 wounded survivors clung to the wreckage for nearly an hour and signaled for help before a second missile was ordered, killing them. Because moral injury depends on each person's individual sense of right and wrong, the same experience can hit people in different ways. This might be fine for you if you're a scumbag. Quote, you don't know how it's going to affect you until you've actually been in the seat and done the job, said Bennett Miller, a former Air Force intelligence analyst who worked on drone strikes in Syria and Iraq during the first Trump administration. So this is a normal guy, right? just like this is a normal guy. At that time, Mr. Trump had changed the rules governing airstrikes to loosen oversight. Large teams worked for a top-secret task force which was allowed to hit targets more often than before, based on less intelligence. The task force repeatedly ordered strikes that hit homes and stores, people on the street, and throngs of civilians seeking safety. There was no public outcry at the time from troops working on the missions, but privately people started to break down. Some wept, some turned to drugs, many left the career field as soon as their assignments were over. In recent years, the Air Force has assigned psychologists and chaplains to many drone units in recognition of the persistent problems. Southern Command, which oversees the boat strikes, did not immediately respond to questions about how it planned to address the risk of moral injury. I think all of this article is a quite fascinating insight into how psychology and mental psychological therapy can be used for imperialism and for capitalism and for reactionary ends. Like something that is supposedly good, healing someone, right? When it's BetterHelp offering free therapy to the IDF because it's so hard for them to kill Palestinian children. That is making it easier for them to do that job. Mr. Bennett said his work started to haunt him after his team followed an Afghan man who the customer said was a top Taliban financier. They watched him dine with his family and play with his children. Then one morning as he walked out of his house, the customer gave the order to kill him. A week later, the same name reappeared on the strike list, and Mr. Bennett realized his team had been ordered to kill the wrong person. Similar mistakes happened twice more with other targets, he said. Quote, we could no longer trust that the intelligence was good, he said. Mr. Bennett said he felt trapped, unable to refuse work that he believed was wrong. Eventually, he became suicidal and was hospitalized in 2019, and the Air Force medically retired him. Honestly, this might be the way out of there. If you're in this situation, just expressing as much emotional distress as possible until you are, allowed to leave because you're loopy, I think might be the one. I'm kidding, of course. The one is unionizing your platoon and shooting your officer, and then commandeering all the military equipment you have access to be commanded by socialist forces. But that one's, maybe some years down the line at this point. He said in an interview that his thoughts have lately been with the many people who have to carry out the boat strikes. I just hope they're getting taken care of, he said. And if they do raise concerns about the mission, hopefully someone can pull them off the line to get help rather than punish them. Oh, Christ. Yeah, so that's our first New York Times piece to broadly look at what the small hitters in the New York Times are doing. What are people's thoughts? If you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. I'm doing work right now. This is work for me. And it's nice when I get paid doing my job. So please do tip if you can, or subscribe or cheer, or go to my Patreon. VOD watchers as well, please tip in the link down below. Again, if everybody here tipped £2, that would be £100, which would be really sick. That said, some people have already tipped more than that. And so, have covered some other people's Sophie dues. Prince Infidel says, thoughts? Thanks, I hate it. Yeah, it's pretty horrible, right? I think that some amount of American nationalism is to be expected in a publication like the New York Times. It doesn't have to be, but it is. And trying to understand it as charitably or progressively or the the nice ways liberals like to think of themselves as much as possible. It's like, this is expressing care for people who are in a bad situation, I guess. Yes, I do agree that moral injury is a real thing and that those people will experience psychological distress, and shouldn't be put in that situation, and it adds to the overall wrongness of the situation. But it's just like so many orders of magnitude smaller than the thing that they have done to those fishermen by killing them, and done to their families by bereaving them, and so on. That it just implicitly states like a hierarchy that of like whose feelings should matter. That like, yeah, must be implicit there. Jenny Azoth says, if you donate £2, I will personally think you are cool and sexy. That's really, that's an important endorsement. Everyone pay attention to that. Hermeneutic says, the thing that hits me the hardest in that article is how defeatist it is. Nothing can change, nothing will change. It's sad, but this is just how it is, and we need to be nice to the military officers who have no choice. So I think here we come back around on doomerism and ideology. Ideology defined as sie wissen das nicht, aber sie tun es. They don't know what it is, but they are still doing it. Prince Infidel, thank you so much for tipping £13 and 12 pence, a mysterious figure that probably means nothing. Is this £2? I'm bad at maths, says Prince Infidel. Thank you so much. Nothing can change, nothing will change. It's sad, but this is just how it is. We need to be nice to the military officers who have no choice, is how Hermeneutic summarizes it here. And I think, yeah, it's... Here we come again to doomerism and ideology. If someone is resigned to the horrible, monstrous machine that we all live in, just doing the thing it does, and it will just keep doing the thing it does, and they don't have like an analysis toward an end point, it can be very easy for their actions to actually be supporting the evil. Part of the problem of Kamala Harris, I think, with that interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates and Ezra Klein in mind, part of the problem of Kamala Harris is that the genocide in Gaza was a meaningful thing to Americans. Like, foreign policy is very boring to most people unless there is a particularly hot issue that people care a lot about. And the genocide is an unbelievably hot issue that people care a hell of a lot about, because the ties between imperialist society and the deaths in Gaza, and then in the West Bank, and then in Syria, and in Lebanon, and they are... It's very obvious, the relationships, actually, because we do so much like financial work and so much arms industry work in the Imperial Core, in terms of like what we actually do offer to the rest of the world and enable them to do. Like, yeah, there's just a lot of support coming from the Imperial Core, US and UK especially, but also Europe, towards Israel and its death machine. And that, like, yeah, it just... the whole... like, our countries have been experiencing moral injury rightly over this thing, because it forces you to reconfigure your ontology. It forces you to reconfigure your understanding of the world, that you do, in fact, definitely live in a system that is evil in a deeply entrenched way. This kind of realization can bring people either to a hopelessness that leads them to say things like, we should care about the moral injury of these troops, it's really sad that they're having a bad time. Or it can bring you to direct action. People watching outside the UK may not be aware of this. I'm not sure how much reach this story has. But we have a set of political prisoners right now in the UK who are starving to death right now. Like, right now. And they're on hunger strike. They have been held without trial, held on remand for years at this point. They are protesting against the proscription of their group as a terrorist organization, against their being held without trial, and against their general treatment, as well as against the thing they were protesting against in the first place, which is the British complicity in genocide in Gaza and the West Bank, and Israel's death machine broadly. It is worth saying, for public record, Palestine Action as a prescribed organization. I'm not endorsing anyone. I'm not telling anyone to support it. But I think that, and I've said this many times, the ban is fucking stupid, and it should not have been banned. And it's very telling how harshly they want to punish the people who were involved in this, the people who saw direct action, immediate material sabotage of the imperialist machine, how much they want to punish people who saw that as the answer, instead of seeing it as doomerism, leading to the conclusion of doomerism from their despair. The people who let their despair radicalize them, those people are now on hunger strike because they've been held for all this time without any trial, for doing non-lethal, non-injuring, like they haven't, attacked members of the public or something. Direct action in service of stopping a genocide, in service of stopping all those children being burned to death that we've been seeing on our phones. Like on social media, we've been seeing like people in hospital beds consumed in flame. We know the stories about like drones that play the sounds of children crying to lure out adults to shoot them. We know about so much just impossible sickness in the organism of the IDF, right? It's just a social monster that like loves like torture, murder, rape, child immolation. It's a horrible and hideous thing, and these people were protesting against it, and protesting against us as a nation having material complicity in that, us supporting that materially. And now they are starving to death to protest that, to protest the conditions they've been held in, to protest the fact that they've been held without trial all this time, which itself is wrong. Like we can just see is just basically wrong on every level. And there is like only one politician at the moment who's like said that they're in solidarity with the hunger strikers, and everyone else is doing nothing, including the people like, of course, the people who are like ultimately pro-genocide, like David Lammy, who's like meant to be Minister of Justice, right? Like these people are, out of anyone in the government besides Keir Starmer, these people are most directly in the jurisdiction and the care of David Lammy. And people have urged him repeatedly to do something about this situation. And now there's reporting that they may well die. Like, this is how seriously the state wants to punish, and how desperately the state wants to destroy people who engage in direct action, people who encourage direct action. They want to do everything they can to tear down people who are directly sabotaging the imperialist machine. Because it fucking works. That's the thing. Like, that's the crucial thing here. It works, and that's why they have to destroy it. And they wouldn't be doing these incredible displays of cruelty if it didn't work. And that's all I can say, really. How this relates to the article we just read, like I said, we have all experienced a moral injury, and letting it, like, lead you to a place you're like, oh no, this hurts my soul. I really hope that the soldiers who are doing this stuff, that it doesn't hurt their soul too. I just realized I'm not watching the podcast anymore. I can take these off finally. I really hope that the soldiers get help, because their soul must be hurting way, way more. That's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting, and it's supporting the violence. It's actively supporting the violence. I hope it's as hard as fucking possible. I hope that anyone reaching for the button to blow some fisherman to pieces or some child in Palestine to pieces, I hope that their finger reaching for the button trembles too much for them to push it. I hope that they are overcome with paroxysms. I hope that their nervous system is overloaded and they go into immediate shock. I hope that they have as hard a time as possible doing that stuff because it's wrong. Like, okay. Now we're going to look at another New York Times piece. To remind everyone, anyone who's new joining, we are looking at different pieces from the New York Times because we're trying to understand what the deal is with New York Times, what their perspective is on the world, how they construct their marketplace of ideas, so we can understand a bit better what was Ezra Klein's role that has now changed and shifted and become incomprehensible to him. I'm doing my job right now, streaming. It's one of my jobs. It's not my main job, but it's a job I do for some extra cash, and I do it for cash. So please cash me up by going !tip in chat, or subscribing or cheering or going to my Patreon. Thank you so much. And VOD viewers, please, the link below. We are now going to look at Tyler Robinson, who allegedly contributed to homicide statistics, not including gang violence. Man accused in Charlie Kirk killing makes first court appearance in person. Tyler Robinson faces murder charges in Utah in the September 10th assassination of Mr. Kirk, the political activist and ally of President Trump. Okay. So there's been a hearing for Tyler Robinson, accused of killing Charlie Kirk. Just fascinated by them using this picture of him. What is this trying to convey? This whole story, this whole saga started out funny, but it's getting funnier. Okay. This is like a reaction image. This is a bit much, actually. Sorry, I'm gonna dwell on this a little bit. I have to. It's just like another background image. No. I actually can't do this as an intermission screen because I think that I and Red Planet are already like quite dangerously close to being seen as endorsing and inciting violence. And I think that if I had Tyler Robinson as one of my Be Right Back screens, oh my goodness, my light just did something crazy. I think it could be misconstrued easily, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Let's turn that off and on again. Alright. Okay, we're getting into the article. Let's do it. Oh, that's the wrong one. Here we go. Tyler Robinson, the man accused of killing the conservative political activist Charlie Kirk at a college campus in September, appeared in Utah court on Thursday for the first time in person since he was arrested. Mr. Robinson wore a blue shirt, pastel-colored tie, and khaki pants. Cameras in the courtroom showed him speaking and smiling with his lawyers, though the exchanges could not be clearly heard in a live stream of the hearing. His parents and brother were also in attendance. Mr. Robinson, 22, has been charged with 7 state criminal counts, including aggravated murder, an offense that is eligible for the death penalty in Utah. A plea to those charges has not been entered. Mr. Kirk, who led the right-wing group Turning Point USA and was a close ally of President Trump, was fatally shot in the neck on the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem on September 10th. One shot was fired from the roof of a building about 150 yards from Mr. Kirk, who was at the school for a speaking engagement. Mr. Kirk's death became a rallying cry for many conservatives as it raised fears of growing political violence. Oh yeah. I'm gonna see if I can change what's going on with this light. I don't know if it's obvious on the lighting on me, but it's almost strobing, like it's flashing very, very rapidly, and it's actually quite uncomfortable in the eyes. I assume it's just set to like exactly the wrong brightness level, and so it's trying to flash on and off too fast or too slow or whatever, just the wrong frequency basically. Is it this one? Oh, it's this one. Okay, we're going to go with it a little bit dimmer. Fears of growing political violence. Fears of growing political violence. Fears of growing political violence. Okay, we're going to carry on. The hearing was held in part to determine what could be disclosed to the public about the case. Lawyers introduced themselves, and then the hearing was quickly closed to the public to make those determinations. Mr. Robinson's lawyers have asked the court to limit some of the proceedings and records from public view, including banning cameras in the courtroom. This seems like an extremely worthwhile thing that would be in the public interest, given how much attention has already been given to the motives behind the killing and how that reflects on which groups are dangerous in society. And clearly we have to lock up all the transgenders, because what if they inspire a man to... What if transgender pussy is just too good? That's the real question. That's the real question that the court has to answer. But it has to do it behind closed doors, because the trial shouldn't be about that. More than every trial should be. Cameras from public view. Because they said that they were concerned about Mr. Robinson's ability to receive a fair trial. Judge Tony F. Graff Jr. of the 4th District Court in Provo, Utah, announced later in the afternoon he was weighing a decision. It was unclear when he would issue a ruling. Mr. Kirk's wife, this bit's astonishing to me, Mr. Kirk's wife, Erica Kirk, has called for cameras to be allowed in the courtroom. Quote, "There were cameras all over my husband when he was murdered," Miss Kirk said in an interview on Fox News with Jesse Waters in November. And here you'd expect her to say, so there should be cameras on his killer to bring maximum justice, right? That's what where it should be going, right? "There have been cameras all over my friends and family mourning. Why not be transparent? There's nothing to hide." She wants more screen time. She wants maximum spectacle, and she wants more screen time. I just like, oh, crikey. Anyway, that was just a short one, but I think when you have like kind of short reporting by the New York Times, by any outlet, I think that's also a useful thing to help judge what its underlying perspective is, because it will usually be written by someone who is very strongly guided by the publication's general like editorial guidelines, because it's not too long, and so like there isn't really much commentary in this one. It's not like this is a big opinion piece, or like this is trying to like strongly shape how we feel about this stuff. I will say the Erica Kirk thing at the end, that being the note to end on, is, I guess, giving the final word, yes, to the widow, but also like a widow who has now taken over the family business of running the fascist takes machine. Prince Infidel says, "Girl, you can only monetize your husband's death so much." Prince Infidel, I think she's painfully aware of that. I think that she wouldn't be acting like this if she didn't realize, if she thought she could carry on doing it forever. I think she'd be being more chill about it. I think she knows that like the milk in that udder is running dry. Million Peaches says it's what he would have wanted. I think we've just hit the next level conspiracy theory. Charlie Kirk is behind the Charlie Kirk assassination. He pulled a Moriarty BBC Sherlock and had a plan that involves even himself dying, because he's just such a mastermind of 5D political chess. Powerful Finger 123 says patenting her husband's voice and using the exclusive rights to do AI slop. Oh, Christ. Okay, let's go to the next article. Well, hang on a second, no. Volpix989 in chat says, they really had so little to say they had to be like, he's wearing a blue shirt. I think this is an interesting thing we can look at in terms of commentary. A lot, like seriously a lot of discussions of this kind of proceeding lean so quickly into moral judgment that even when they were saying something like that, they would be saying like, I don't know, the alleged killer looked menacing in his blue shirt, or was trying to look soft by wearing a light blue shirt or something. And so like there, I guess the lack of commentary could itself be, a striving towards neutrality. All these guys, all these publications sure love neutrality. All right. Next article. Let's go. This one has a different title in the the page title, which is America is entering its third civil war, and is an opinion piece by Thomas L. Friedman. I've heard of before, is broadly quite centrist, is not one of the guys I think that people are flocking to the New York Times to hear this guy's takes in the same way. So could be still quite representative of like a center in the marketplace of ideas. What was the second Civil War? The Civil Rights Movement. The article is going to be saying the second Civil War was the Civil Rights Movement and all of the unrest around it. And I think that's... I mean, it wasn't like an officially declared military conflict with armies, but like... it was pretty intense. Yeah. A lot of people died. This article has the page title, America is entering its third civil war, but the current title is, Trump isn't interested in fighting a new Cold War, he wants a new civilizational war. Now this one is interesting in a couple of ways, because civilizational war isn't like what civil war is short for, or whatever. Civil war is a civil war, as in it's a civil matter, it's domestic, it's within the nation, it's within the one society or grouping. There's a bit of a strange like bleeding of similar terms together throughout this. Secondly, it's worth pointing out, I don't know this exactly, but having read this earlier, I feel like this angle, the new Cold War thing, might be where Friedman is saying he wishes this was going instead. Like, this article will criticize Trump for being too racist and then talk about birth rates. Spoiler, everyone. And also, like, I think if it can be said this article is saying he should be doing this instead, that this instead is focusing on China as the enemy instead. But let's read it. Okay. Every few years, I am reminded of one of my cardinal rules of journalism. This is always powerful. This is like a very Ross Douthat opening, actually, but broadly a very liberal slop way to start stuff. It's like, I am a brain genius, and I'm going to share some of my wonderful brain genius wisdom with you. I've come up with these fantastical rules, and you can learn from me. And I say that aware that I am trying to give people tools for understanding the world myself. It's just that mine are based in materialism. Instead of, what's he doing in the profile picture here? Archivers will take a second to load this. It's definitely one of the classic thinky poses. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's so powerful. It's interlaced fingers. It's interlaced fingers here like this. Big think time. Time for a big think. I'm starving. I could really go for a big think right now. Okay. Every few years I'm reminded of one of my cardinal rules of journalism. Whenever you see elephants flying, don't laugh, take notes. Because if you see elephants flying, something very different is going on that you don't understand, but you and your readers need to. Pretty good rule, I'll say. Not horrible. I appreciate this. Let's see how he makes sense of the elephants that he sees in the modern day. I bring that up today in response to the Trump administration's 33-page national security strategy released last week. It has been widely noted that at a time when our geopolitical rivalry with Russia and China is more heated than at any other time since the Cold War, and Moscow and Beijing are more and more closely aligned against America, the Trump 2025 national security doctrine barely mentions these two geopolitical challenges. While the report surveys US interests across the globe, what intrigues me most about it is how it talks about our European allies and the European Union. It cites activities by our sister European democracies that, quote, undermine political liberty and sovereignty, migration policies that are transforming the continent and creating strife, censorship of free speech, and suppression of political opposition, cratering birth rates, and loss of national identities and self-confidence. Quote, should present trends continue, it goes on, the continent will be unrecognizable in 20 years or less. God, I fucking hope so, especially the Netherlands. Indeed, the strategy paper warns, unless our European allies elect more, quote, patriotic nationalist parties committed to stemming immigration, Europe will face civilizational erasure. Unstated but implied is that we will judge you not by the quality of your democracy, but by the stringency with which you stem the migration flow from Muslim countries to Europe's south. Okay. That is a flying elephant no one should ignore. It is language unlike any previous US national security survey, and to my mind, it reveals a deep truth about this second Trump administration. How much it came to Washington to fight America's third civil war, not to fight the West's new Cold War. The West's new Cold War, that's where we should be putting our attention, not America's third civil war. Yes, in my view, we are in a new civil war over a place called home. First, I need to make a quick detour to home. These days, there is a tendency to reduce every crisis to the dry metrics of economics or the chessboard machinations of political or military campaigns or to ideological manifestos. Okay. Thomas, I'm going to need you to understand before you go on with this. And I'm not even American, so I have less business understanding this than you do. But understand that a whole bunch of people in your country are there because their ancestors were kidnapped at gunpoint and forced to be property for other human beings and to work to death. And that went on for generations, and they have never been treated as a population as truly equal, truly human, or truly free. So, that would be a great starting point before we talk about who calls your country home. I think that would just be a cool place to start. All, of course, have their relevance, but the longer I've worked as a journalist, the more I have found that the better starting place for unlocking a story is with the disciplines of psychology and anthropology. They are often much better at revealing the primal energies, anxieties, and aspirations that animate our national politics and global geopolitics, because they uncover and illuminate not just what people say they want, but also what they fear and what they privately pray for and why. I was not here for the Civil War of the 1860s, and I was still a boy during our second great civil struggle, the 1960s Civil Rights Movement and assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. But I am definitely on duty for America's third Civil War. This one, like the first two, is over the questions, whose country is this anyway? And who gets to feel at home in our national house? This Civil War has been less violent than the first two, but it is early. Can we have an acknowledgement that the first two civil wars were about whether black people were people? Whether you get to call this place home is insane. Whether you get to call this place home, or whether you are here as a guest of some kind, that is an insane way to pose this about people who were forced to be there and have been treated as property and then as subhuman. It is completely insane to make this about who gets to call this place home. Humans have an enduring structural need for home, not only as a physical shelter, but a psychological anchor and moral compass too. That is why Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, my favorite movie, got it exactly right. There's no place like home. It's a bit much. I'm sorry, it's just all a bit much. Okay, let's go. And when people lose that sense of home, whether by war, rapid economic change, cultural change, demographic change, climate change, or technological change, they tend to lose their center of gravity. This is all true. They may feel as though they are being hurtled around in a tornado, grabbing desperately for anything stable enough to hold on to. And that can include any leader who seems strong enough to reattach them to that place called home, however fraudulent that leader is or unrealistic the prospect. With that as background, I cannot remember another time in the last 40 years when I have travelled around America and the world and found more people asking the same question: whose country is this anyway? Or as Itamar Ben-Gvir, oh Christ almighty, the far-right nationalist Israeli minister put it in Hebrew in his political banner ads during Israel's 2022 election, who is the landlord here? Wow. That's, that one's pretty loaded, actually. Let me just... change. I'm sitting a little bit. Just got a little uncomfortable sitting on my foot there. I just need a second to think about who is the landlord here. That's yeah, that's really something else. Okay. Crikey, I guess is what I'm gonna keep saying. I'm gonna keep saying crikey. Alright. And that is not an accident. Today, more people are living outside their country of birth than at any point in recorded history. There are approximately 304 million global migrants, some seeking work, some seeking education, some seeking safety from internal conflicts, some fleeing droughts and floods and deforestation. In our own hemisphere, the US Customs and Border Protection Office reports that migrant encounters at our southern border hit historical highs in 2023, while estimates from the Pew Research Center suggest that the total unauthorized population in America grew to 14 million in the same year, breaking a decade-long period of relative stability. But this is not just about immigrants. America's third civil war is being fought on multiple fronts. Okay, let's understand the conflict as Thomas L. Friedman understands it. On one front is white, predominantly Christian Americans resisting the emergence of the minority-dominated America that is now baked into our future sometime in the 2040s, driven by lower birth rates among white Americans and growth in Hispanic, Asian, and multiracial American populations. Whew. That's a fucking big one there. That's wowee. So here we have an example of someone who I think seems like a fairly down the middle of the road slop writer, and is talking about birth rates and talking about how white people are going to be outnumbered in America as I guess a serious issue, I guess, is what that's supposed to be saying. Whew. Weirdo of Oz here saying dominated is a big strong. I don't quite understand that message. But yes, the use of dominated there, a minority dominated America. Yeah, striking. Princess Beck Knight 666, hello, has said, I love how talking about white birth rates has become a normal thing for nominally liberal types to talk about. Widow of Us meant to say it's a bit strong. Yeah, absolutely. Bit rich for my blood. Beck Knight, love talking about white birth rates has become a normal thing for nominally liberal types to talk about. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing of the collapse of the imperial project, I think. Like, they just all are going to keep becoming more and more nakedly fascist. But not all, right? Like, this is the thing. I think that, like, I am reminded very strongly of when Matt Iglesias, such an arch-liberal, put out his book 1 Billion Americans, where he's like, there are 1 billion Chinese people, there should be 1 billion Americans, this would be a good thing for the world. This would help somehow, I guess. Everyone else in the world just like, dear God, no, not 1 billion Americans. I can't imagine a worse thing. But like, yeah, I think it's a quite interesting concept. Like, what's driving the liberals? In a sense, it's the imperial boomerang. I think that's a part of it, because like rhetorical technologies, just as much as like the literal like weaponry or whatever used at the forefront of imperialist conquest, like, also boomerang around, and we will see like the same language used to dehumanize people inside the imperial core that was already used to dehumanize Palestinians, for example, right? Like, all of these processes follow the same shape, whether they're like a literal physical technology, a military technology, a social technology, or a rhetorical one. But I think where I'm particularly interested, and this is like tipping my hand a bit in where I'm like what I'm trying to get at with all of this stuff to do with the New York Times today, where I'm particularly interested at the moment is Ezra Klein, who I do think wants the world to be better than it is. I do think he wants that. And I think he might even agree with us about a whole bunch of things that would be better, even. All of this change is very striking to me, having taken a 2-year hiatus over specifically the last 2 years. Because so much of the liberal slop world that was already very conservative and rested on incredibly fascistic imperialist ideas is now so nakedly fascist. Like, now so nakedly fascist. And there are a whole bunch of guys who have had a quite naive, quite idealistic approach to a lot of like progressive and liberal politics and being left of center, where they're, I mean, Ezra Klein really like embodies this with abundance, right? Like his proposal that there should be basically just an imperialist social democracy, right? Similarly, I think Matt Iglesias has become more nakedly fascist in the meantime, but remembering him doing 1 billion Americans is like, that's eugenics. Like, you're proposing a eugenics program, and you're proposing it for the sake of America outcompeting China, because America must succeed, because America is exceptional. And Vodrella, your message says imperialist social democracy, and that's the whole message, so I don't quite understand what the question is supposed to be. Yeah, and I think that which way slop writers will go, and if there is any way out for them, I mean, the way out necessarily, I think, involves becoming a communist. I think it involves decolonial thought. I think it involves a rigorous analysis of imperialism. But like, whether there is anything savable in the marketplace of ideas, like whether the Overton window can be pulled to the left, or whether their interlocutors can be defeated and forced to like cede ground, whether there could be organizing at this level to make any kind of change to the like increasingly fascist nature of these liberal slop publications. Yeah, I think that's where I'm finding some interest in this stuff right now. I'm also doing my job by streaming, and I really, really like it when I get paid for doing my job. I think that's really good and cool when I get paid for working. So if you agree that it's good and cool to pay people when they're working, then please support the stream by subscribing or cheering or donating directly using command TIP, that's TIP, and then sending me a donation. Every little helps, as they say. And also, if you want to support me on Patreon, that's patreon.com/Sophie from Mars, and you can support me monthly there, and that's my main source of income, so I really, really appreciate that. Vordrella has clarified, I was listening to Imperialism and the Split in Socialism recently, and the topic came up in it in 1916. The topic of imperialist social democracy. Yeah, if you want to hear more of my thoughts about it, this has been one of my biggest gripes against like UBI for a while. Is that a communist society that emerges out of the dictatorship of the proletariat, or even for that matter, an anarchist society that runs on mutual aid, or whatever, one where people have a fundamental agency based in being human beings recognizing each other's humanity, is one capable of international solidarity and fraternity rather than international competition. And if we are currently in the richest nations on Earth, which for the time being we are, the UK is plummeting. But if for the time being we are in some of the richest nations on Earth and we want to have the best standards of living, what's the difference between everyone having a check from the government that takes care of their rent and their bills and gives them a little disposable income, and then everyone has like a basic minimum amount of income, this universal basic income that they can use to get all of their needs met, and then they can earn more money on top of that if they want to. What's really the difference between that and, say, a communist planned economy where some people have nicer jobs and nicer flats, but we've made sure that everyone has a basic minimum where they have, no one is homeless and no one is without food or water or power and all of the most basic things they need to survive. What's the difference there? And the difference is to do with self-determination. And it is a big one because, like, if these imperialist nations, without proper self-determination, our working classes are effectively handed this higher quality of life. Sweden official says, halal. If our imperialist working classes are handed this higher quality of life by the state and not empowered, it is a non-reformist reform, right? When we talk about reformist and non-reformist reforms, like, absolutely it is a non-reformist reform that empowers a whole bunch of the working class who will be able to do more if that quality of life improvement was made, and it would just immediately make life better for a bunch of people. But it's like being given free chips at the casino. Like, the casino keeps being everything that it is, and there is still an outside to it, where people are sleeping rough, people are queuing to get in, people are being turned away. And yeah, like an imperialist social democracy is first and foremost imperialist, not first and foremost socialist. Because socialism without internationalism just isn't socialism. Let's get back to Thomas Friedman. Yay! Everybody say, yay! Everybody loves Thomas Friedman. Yay! God, he's the fucking worst. I'm so sick of this. Okay, let's try and get through the rest of it quickly. On another front, the first one was the white Christians who are really worried because of birth rates. On another front are black Americans still struggling against those who would raise new walls to keep them from a place called home. Then there are Americans of every background trying to steady themselves and amid cultural currents that seem to shift by the week. New expectations about issues like identity, bathrooms, and even a typeface. What's this? Crikey. There was a typeface that was woke. Okay. Return to tradition, Times New Roman. Okay. Right. Even a typeface, as well as how we acknowledge one another in the public square. The public square. Go fuck yourself. No, I'm sorry. Like, I try to really keep cool about this, but like, go fuck yourself. Actually, Thomas. Like, fuck off. This is this is just too much. Also, it's just like, in this civil war, are Black Americans struggling against people who want to make them feel unwelcome in the place they've been born, and everyone amid cultural currents? Is that a reasonable way to describe fronts of this war? Like, it feels like you're really skirting around what's actually happening and what's super fucking obvious. This is, by the way, is like some of the foundational reason of why like liberal slop is compelling to me, is that it's so powerfully hollow. Like, it really, like, there is a deafening silence in just about every piece of liberal slop where, dear God, why aren't you saying fascism? Why aren't you saying imperialism? Why aren't you talking about the exploitation? Why aren't you talking about the lynchings are back? Like, why aren't you talking about these things? Why aren't you talking about the genocide? Why aren't you talking about all these things that are incredibly relevant to the topic you're discussing? It's not just me saying like, oh, well, you didn't mention people who use ze pronouns in this article or something. Like, I'm not being myopic. Like, there are things that they constantly just willfully refuse to see and are trying to stop their audience from seeing as well. And that's compelling and horrifying. Million Peaches, hello. Million Peaches says, it's funny because Calibri isn't even dyslexia friendly. Yes. Yeah. It just looks soft. It's just been feminized. That's why it's woke. On yet another front, the gale force winds of technological change propelled now by artificial intelligence. Here's a good example. Mention the AI bubble. That's a good example of something that's relevant to your audience and you're not telling them about while discussing AI. Like, that's insane. Artificial intelligence are sweeping through workplaces faster than people can plant their feet. On a fifth front, young Americans of every race, creed, and color are straining to afford even a modest home, the physical and psychological harbor that has long anchored the American dream. My sense is that we now have millions of Americans waking up each morning unsure of the social script, the economic ladder, or the cultural norms that are okay to practice in their homes. Practice in the home. They are psychologically homeless. That's just gibberish, right? Because there are a whole bunch of people who feel very deeply, deeply entitled to these nations as their homes, and a whole bunch of people who have no other choice. And it's just like, yeah, it probably is having a detrimental psychological effect to people that they don't feel at home in their own country. But for some people, it's materially backed up by real, like, material differences in people's lives. Oh, Christ almighty. When Donald Trump made building a wall along the Mexican border the central motif of his first campaign, he instinctively chose a word that did double duty for millions of Americans. Wall. Oh, wow. We're really like venturing into like the absolute highest, most complicated realms of burger gun freedom thought. This is amazing. Just like, wall meant a physical barrier against uncontrolled immigration that was accelerating our transition to a minority-majority-led America. But it also meant a wall against... a minority-majority What are you on about? What are you on about? Fucking hell. But it also meant a wall against the pace and scope of change, the cultural, digital, and generational whirlwinds reshaping daily life. Okay, so this guy is a romantic reactionary. I've just gotten it. I've just finally fully understood. He's a romantic reactionary. Okay. He finds it very beautiful to return to tradition. That, to me, is the deep backdrop to Trump's national security strategy. He is not interested in refighting the Cold War to defend and expand the frontiers of democracy. He is, in my view, is that what he should be... He is, in my view, interested in fighting the civilizational war over what is the American home and what is the European home, with an emphasis on race and Christian Judeo faith, and who is an ally in that war and who is not. This is some insanely fashy shit. The economics writer Noah Smith argued in his Substack this week that this was the key reason the MAGA movement began to turn away from Western Europe and draw closer to Vladimir Putin's Russia, because Trump's devotees saw Putin as more of a defender of white Christian nationalism and traditional values than the nations of the European Union. Historically, quote, in the American mind, Smith wrote, Europe stood across the sea as a place of timeless homogeneity, where the native white population had always been and always would remain. However, quote, in the 2010s, it dawned on those Americans that this hallowed image of Europe was no longer accurate. With their working populations dwindling, European countries took in millions of refugees. Dwindling is a crazy way to just, like... Declining... Declining might be an accurate thing. I don't know the overall statistics or what he's exactly referring to here. But dwindling, implying that, like, European white people are about to, like, die out, is just completely insane. European countries took in millions of Muslim refugees and other immigrants from the Middle East and Central South Asia, many of whom didn't assimilate nearly as well as their peers in the US. You'd hear people say things like, Paris isn't Paris anymore. Where did you hear that, Friedman? At the fucking country club? This is the most racist, honky-ass shit I've ever fucking heard. You'd hear people say stuff like, Paris isn't Paris anymore, while clutching their pearls and getting their manservant to escort them to the car. Jesus fucking Christ. Today's MAGA-led American right, Smith added, does quote, not care intrinsically about democracy. No fucking shit, bro. Or about allyship, or about NATO, or about the European project. They care about Western civilization. Unless Europe expels Muslim immigrants en masse and starts talking about its Christian heritage, the Republican Party is unlikely to lift a hand to help Europe with any of its problems. In other words, when protecting Western civilization with a focus on race and faith become the center of US national security, the biggest threat becomes uncontrolled migration into America and Western Europe, not Russia or China. And protecting American culture, spiritual health, and traditional families are framed as core national security requirements, as the defense analyst Rick Landgraf pointed out on the defense website, War on the Rocks. And that's why the Trump National Security Strategy paper is no accident or the work of a few low-level ideologues. It is, in fact, the Rosetta Stone explaining what really animates this administration at home and abroad. Good Lord. Crikey. That was a lot. That was really goddamn fashy. Fucking hell. What's everyone's thoughts? I'll give you a minute while I do the plug and you can let me know what you're thinking, and then we'll chat about it some more. Everyone, if you've been enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. We have a few more articles to get through today. We've got 2 more, but there are some supporting things we need to look at for those to work. For one of them to get more context. If you've been enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer or donate directly using Command Tip. You can also support me on Patreon monthly, which is my main source of income, and that would really help me out. I am primarily a video essayist. Let me just full screen. I am primarily a video essayist. I have been taking things a little bit slow this year. I'm having some creative internal process, a little funky little artistic process moment this December. I'm working on a video poem at the moment, and while I like work back towards like I'm trying to kind of like find what I like in my video making process a bit more at the moment. But there will be a bunch of new stuff in the new year. I am working on stuff, some very much to do with and inspired by liberal slop stuff. Some much more creative, and like I say, I'd call it video poetry more than video essays. And I also have enormous projects like the Mad and the Mentally Ill and Monster Men that I want to carry on with and have been underway for a long time. So yeah, my Patreon is worth checking out, and you'll see all that stuff early as it progresses. Yeah, but if you just want to support me generally and keep the stream going, subscribing or cheering or donating directly is in command tip. Or if you're a VOD viewer, the link down below, you can also donate to me there, or you can support me on Patreon, and I appreciate all of it a lot, so please do. Schmorstein says, many of those nations are under to illegal immigration. They get in these boats and crash land on the UK and scatter. They don't have the same policies as we do. Not alert about it, really. Could you explain what you mean by that a bit more? Prince Infidel saying, no thanks, I hate it, I think, to the article here. Jackus Takus, hello, welcome to the stream, says, I'm selfishly very excited to see Monster Man again. So the plan is, over the winter sometime, I'm going to film a mini-sode. It's not at all going to be a full episode of Monster Man, but it kind of exists to signal to everyone, hey, I am doing Monster Man, it is still happening. So there's going to be like a Monster Man like 4.5, where I focus on Schmolstein saying, where are you from? I asked for you to explain the comment that you made. Could you please explain the comment that you made? Prince Infidel says, video poem, you nerd. Deeply excited for that project. I love poetry, and it's like a way that I'm very drawn to write, and I've actually written a lot of poetry in my life and continue to quite regularly, but I don't really tend to publish it. Yeah, but for example, my coming out video, Being Seen, I would call a video poem, and I think that I think making stuff like that is very core to like stuff that's like artistically quite driving, like animating for me. Monster Man, yeah. So we'll do a Monster Man 4.5, which will be about something that's like a bit of a microcosm, but slightly adjacent to what the main topic of the next big one's going to be. And so it's like simultaneously a little bit of a teaser for there's more Monster Man coming, and also like a thing that I think wouldn't fit very cleanly, like wouldn't fit so perfectly inside of the next essay, but will be a lot of fun to do. Valerie the Lovely Italian saying, quoting me, I think, I have enormous projects. I'm sorry, I have a strange mind. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, Valerie. Jackus Takus says, thematic lead-in type of deal. Yeah, and also I wanted to say about this, it's okay that that's a selfish thing that you want to see more Monster Men. I think there are more politically important things I'm doing, like getting the Zad documentary out in the next few months is very important to me. But it makes me really happy to hear that people are excited about Monster Man and want more of it, because it's one of my favorite things that I make. Okay, anyway. This article. Racist garbage. I think would be a starting point. I think that in terms of civilizational erasure, that one's pretty fucking crazy. Cherry Pitsbit saying I should enlarge my projects. I've been enlarging my projects for a while. That's good. Civilizational erasure. Yeah, migrants, some of the most unfortunate and like precarious people in our society, not really likely to like change society in a sort of top-down way where like culture disappears or whatever. Like I think that we were speaking of the war on Christmas a bit earlier, and Vulpix989 says inflates your projects, making them big and round. Yeah, like this idea of civilizational erasure. I think that like the article, to be clear, is being critical of it. Oh, I don't have my thing on screen. The article, to be clear, is being explicitly critical, right? And is saying that, like, it's bad that Trump is focused on this stuff. But he's saying that, like, it's bad that Trump is focused on this stuff because he should be focused on how dangerous Russia and China are. And it's just like a complete materialist analysis of this stuff would take all of the like fronts in the Third Civil War that he was talking about and say, okay, all of these people are in various ways materially disenfranchised members of the working class, and what they need is a better quality of life, and part of how we can achieve that is by not trying to dominate these other countries and working in cooperation with them, and that would all be just fucking swell, actually. Prince Infidel summarizes saying, such racist garbage, basically saying this country is for the whites. Yeah. Schmulstein, explaining a bit more here, says, USA in the past year doubled down on immigration policies. Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe tripled down. They've become incredibly naked in their fascist treatment of migrants, and the ways that they just have always not really seen black and brown people as completely human. And yeah. Fuzzy Numbers says, I feel so guilty because all the stuff we need for our phones and computers comes from the Congo. Yes, and that is worth feeling sad about a bit. Are you aware of organizing campaigns to try to do something about the conditions of people in the Congo? Because I think that's the only like useful thing you can do with that feeling, is try to actually change that reality. It's not an inherently bad thing that rare earth minerals come from the places that they come from. The issue is the exploitative labor practices and the imperialist extraction, where the mineral wealth in a country doesn't benefit the country and the people in that place where it's from. Good to see you, Prince Infidel. Thank you for stopping by, and thanks for being in the stream. And hello, VOD watcher Prince Infidel. Welcome back. It's about how their mind and what those practices look like, and that's goodness. And that's something we can change, right? That's a thing that we can change with organizing an international solidarity. So I think that's what we have to commit to. Okay, we are going to move on to some pieces about China. We're going to talk about China a little bit. These are interesting in terms of their basic, like, American-centric understanding of the world. I think that's quite interesting. I think that, in chat, let me know how soon you feel you have a take of what they're actually describing here, that they're describing via Yankee brain. Okay, so. Historic shift underway in China's economy as investment slump deepens. Oh my goodness, an anonymous gifter is gifting 5 tier 1 subs to the community. So Renji, Middle-earth Marxist, Artist Synth, Haley Snaily, and Phyrexian Quadriplegic, you have all just been gifted tier 1 gift subs. You can now use Sophie from Mars emotes anywhere on Twitch. Congratulations, and thank you so much to the anonymous gifter for those 5 subs. Middle Earth Marxist says, OMG, thank you, Anonymous the Hackers. Yes, they are. Anonymous the Hacker Collective are big fans of Sophie from Mars. Okay, let me know when you feel you understand what's going on with China here. Historic shift underway in China's economy as investment slump deepens. Investment in manufacturing, infrastructure, and property is expected to fall this year, a remarkable turn for an economy whose growth reshaped the world. Okay. For the past 3 decades, as China's economy has developed into a global powerhouse, investment has grown reliably each year. That is about to change. This year, China's investments in assets like new factories, public infrastructure, and housing are expected to fall for the first time since the late 1980s, ushering in a more conservative era for an economy that has reshaped the global order with years of robust growth. The shift also signals that investing in China is no longer a surefire bet, even as Beijing continues to project confidence with economic growth estimates of 5%. But, as is often the case with the country's economic data, the investment slump has raised more questions than answers. A real estate crisis in China has dragged on for 5 years with no end in sight, sapping the strength from one of the economy's pillars. Local governments, strapped for cash because of the property downturn, are not pouring money into infrastructure projects as they did during previous projects of economic malaise. Beijing's crackdown on excessive competition among Chinese manufacturers has chilled the climate for capital investment to fuel expansion. From January to October, a broad measure called fixed asset investment has fallen 1.7% from the same period last year. The slide began in the second half of this year and accelerated with a sharp double-digit decline in October. Analysts believe that investment dipped again in November, with that data scheduled to be released on Monday. Investment in property, infrastructure, and manufacturing, the 3 major components that make up the figure, are all declining at the same time. In the past, a downturn in one area was offset by spending in another segment. It is rare for all 3 pillars of investment to fall at once. The government typically has stepped in to manage downturns by bolstering real estate or spending lavishly on infrastructure. Beijing has been reluctant to act boldly this year to help. This is a historically significant change, said Dan Wang, a director on Eurasia Group's China team. Quote, "This is a different style of managing the economy in the short term." Ms. Wang said that this more passive approach suggests Chinese leaders are confident in the continued strength of exports, which have fueled a record trade surplus despite rising protectionism and growing global concern about the flood of inexpensive Chinese goods. This was the paragraph at which I said to my wife, yes, I had it completely right. I knew exactly what was going on in this article from the beginning. When I first saw this headline, I thought, right, they're not investing as much because they've already got everything they need and they're doing just fine. They're already doing just fine. We were literally reading last week about how Europe doesn't have anything to offer China to sell China because China just has all the shit it could possibly need already. And then this week we see the New York Times is trying to tell us, oh no, there's not as much investment in China anymore. They're not manufacturing as much stuff. They're not, investing in making more capacity to manufacture more shit. They're not investing money in building more housing. Clearly, there's a serious economic downturn going on in China. And it's just like, if you have Yankee brain on, that's a bad thing. But if you have central planned economy brain on, it seems like maybe they're completely confident that things are going well. So let's look a little bit at some context. There was a link in here that said a real estate crisis. That all sounds pretty bad, doesn't it, right? Sounds like there's a serious problem in the hype train, by the way. Sounds like there's a serious problem in China if there isn't enough investment, and there's a real estate crisis. So let's quickly jump across to this article, which unfortunately has some kind of graphical problem. It's called 5 Years On, China's Property Crisis Has No End in Sight. Okay. Princess Beck Knight 666, hello, says, Willow and I will have to head out. Def gonna catch the rest of the VOD later. See you, kitty. Thank you for coming to watch, and I hope you enjoy the VOD. And also, hello, Beck and Willow, VOD watchers. Welcome back. Valerie the Lovely Italian says, my opponent is no longer researching new text. Clearly he is stagnating. Opponent has researched everything. It's pretty good. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Joe saying, what if line flattened? What if? What if that was all they could get out of the line and they don't need more? 5 years on, China's property crisis has no end in sight. Okay. So, when China Evergrande, once the biggest Chinese property developer, went public in Hong Kong in 2009, the country's real estate market was red hot. The frenzy over the company was so intense that for every lucky person who bought at least one share of stock, 46 others were shut out. How times have changed. Now a symbol of China's real estate boom and bust, Evergrande was delisted from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange on Monday, 4 years after the company first warned that it was facing financial difficulties and 2 years after it sought bankruptcy protection. Evergrande's collapse, with $300 billion in debt, mirrors the slow and painful unwinding of China's property sector. Government policies staved off a sudden crash and instead delivered a grinding slowdown. The housing downturn has not delivered the devastating shock the United States suffered in the 2008 financial crisis, but it has been hanging over the economy for 5 years with no end in sight. Last month, new home prices dropped at their fastest pace in 9 months, and the prices of second-hand homes continue to slide, according to the National Bureau of Statistics in China. As the slump continues, the government has stepped in to prop up just enough indebted property companies to prevent a broad collapse. China Vanke, one of the... I don't know if I'm saying that right, to be clear. China Vanke, one of the country's biggest developers... has repeatedly leaned on its top shareholder, the state-owned firm Shenzhen Metro, for loans to cover obligations from its $51 billion of debt. Shenzhen Metro has extended $3.4 billion over 9 loans to Vanke this year. Vanke reported on Friday that it lost $1.7 billion from January through June, 21% worse than a year earlier. So we can see how this is quite bad, right? This is a major metro system who is loaning money to a real estate developer, and the real estate developer is using it to just pay off their debt. It's sounding a lot like American capitalism. It's sounding quite fucking dire here. And then we look at what the Chinese state was doing. Where was the description? Sorry. Did it explain it there? Oh, it was here, sorry. It's in the next paragraph. When Beijing rolled out rules in 2020 to curb the excessive borrowing of property developers, it kicked off a downward spiral, pushing many real estate firms to the brink. They did it. The government said, stop doing this kind of big borrowing. It's a problem. We don't want you to borrow big so you can build loads of housing. That's not good. And then it started bankrupting big real estate firms and construction firms, like the real estate market in general. And then they've been putting policies in place that have not been reversing this, but have been slowing it down so that there's not a sudden economic crash. And I have, by the way, this is at risk of being called a tanky by people who have never been involved in any moment of organizing or struggle in their entire lives. I'm now going to bring up a little quote here from The Star, which I absolutely believe to be a Chinese outlet. There was a .com/CN address I saw earlier for this, but I'm just quoting here from Minister of Housing and Urban Rural Development Ni Hong said in an article published just after the release of recommendations for formulating the 15th five-year plan, that's 2026 to 2030, Ni said, Today, public demand for housing has shifted from basic access to quality living. Moreover, with an aging population, declining birth rates, regional population shifts, and evolving lifestyles, housing needs have become more personalized and diversified. Zhang Bo, head of the 58 Anjuke Research Institute, said, "The era of a sheer nationwide housing shortage is largely over, but it has been replaced by a more complex and deeply entrenched structural problem." So, okay. Volpix989 says, "Big problematic tanky from Mars." Yes, absolutely. This is my big problematic tanky era. I don't know how much I trust Chinese state officials. I only know how much I trust American state officials. And I would like everyone to assess for themselves, what's going on here, but taken as a state of intention, as a statement of intent, right? The intent here is that they're going to just improve the housing that exists so everyone has a really nice house. They're saying everyone has enough houses. We are going to have a nice house. We're going to make sure everyone has nice houses now. And that sounds pretty cool. If we look at homelessness in China, I was looking at this earlier, and I know this is just the Wikipedia, but there's a great description here. So there's the populations, there's the homelessness population statistic here, 0.18% of the country's population. To be clear, in the US, it's like 0.27. In the UK, it's like 0.67. But then there's this clarifying paragraph. It's quite important. It's important to note that that homelessness looks very different to homelessness in other countries, because it mainly surrounds not living in one's registered household rather than living on the street. A 2020 article states, quote, "Depending on how one defines homelessness, China has either a very tiny homeless population or an extremely large one. Compared to other countries, there are very few vagrants, people living on the streets of China's cities without means of support. But if one counts the people who migrated to cities without a legal permit, work as day laborers without job security or a company dormitory, company dormitory, and live in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions on the edge of cities, there are nearly 300 million homeless." So, this large homeless population, which again is smaller than our homeless population proportionally, is defined by people who are in precarious material situations, or their housing is really bad. That's how they define homeless people. Those people aren't even counted as in any kind of bad situation in the UK or US. And we are counting people who do not have a home, and the number is several times larger in the US and UK. So that's all worth looking at. You can decide for yourself if the Chinese state is doing the thing that it says it's doing. But it certainly aligns with the stuff that's happening materially here, and quite comically doesn't align at all with the New York Times description of what's happening here, because the New York Times description is, they're investing less, that means they're losing, line isn't going up as much. Okay, let's read the rest of the main article here. Instead of pumping money into the economy by building more airports and high-speed railroad stations, highways and bridges, local governments are holding back. And for the property sector, there has been no industry-wide bailout or imagine the government not bailing out big greedy companies. Fucking hell. There has been no industry-wide bailout or comprehensive plan to spur real estate investment. The investment drought is playing out urgently in the boardrooms of China Vanke, one of the country's largest property developers, which is now teetering on the edge of possible financial collapse. Editor's note, China Vanke died on the way back to its home planet. Vanke, unable to pay its debts, has leaned on its top shareholder, the state-owned firm Shenzhen Metro, to cover its debt obligations, but last month it asked bondholders to delay repayment of a bond for the first time, signaling that state financial support may have reached its limit. A deadline on some of its debt looms on Monday, and Vanke may need creditors to accept a delay in getting paid. Chinese officials have started to show some alarm at the plunge in investment, which was listed as a policy priority for 2026 in a plan announced on Thursday by Xi Jinping. The deep problems in the property sector, too many apartments, and long-running drops in their value have shaken business confidence. Chen Ting-tsai, who has run a manufacturing and real estate development company in Zhuhai, a city in southern China, for more than 3 decades, said customers are not expanding their business now because the economy is weak. He said the pipeline of design contracts has thinned dramatically. Quote, some manufacturers have shut down factories and frozen all investment in new facilities, said Mr. Chen, 69, who is from Taiwan and has worked in China since the 1990s. So this is a Taiwanese guy in China who's a business owner, is who they're taking as the normal Chinese guy opinion on China. Okay, cool. Everyone is frantically selling off fixed assets because they're uncertain about the future. Pam Jiang, a sales assistant at Fashion Tex International Limited, a textile company with roughly 150 employees in Jiangsu province, one of China's main fabric manufacturing hubs, said the domestic textile industry is pulling back on investment in facilities. Again, pulling back on making new places. The textile industry in China is basically stagnant and downsizing, she said. Oh no. She attributed the drop in investment to rising labor costs and uncertainty about tariffs. Instead of expanding domestically, Ms. Jiang said, many Chinese textile manufacturers are investing abroad in countries such as Vietnam and Egypt. The slowdown in manufacturing investment has coincided with the government's campaign against involution, a term for the ruthless competition in which Chinese companies wage profit-eroding price wars to gain market share and outlast rivals. Provincial or city governments have often fueled such races to the bottom by providing incentives and support to foster local champions. This produced an oversupply of well-funded companies, each ready to add more products than customers want to buy. They want to have enough and not loads more. That's not them being bad at this. But some economists say Beijing's efforts to slow that process down have given local governments permission to hold back on throwing money at manufacturing. Jeremy Smith, a research analyst at Rhodium Group's China practice, said he believes local governments might be taking Beijing's cue. He noted that fixed asset investment has declined in nearly all of China's provinces and prefectural-level cities since May. The downturn in investment numbers, he said, more accurately reflects what Rhodium had suspected following the collapse of the property sector. Rhodium has reported that China's investment activity likely fell in 2023 and 2024 based on other economic signals such as credit growth. Due mainly to slower investment, Rhodium estimated that China's economic growth was between 2.4% and 2.8% last year, well short of the government's official figure of 5%. Declining investment is more the norm than the exception, Mr. Smith said. On the one hand, he said, Beijing seeks to project an image of economic resilience. At the same time, it aims to demonstrate that it is curbing the harmful competition plaguing many of its industries. A slump does not bode well for China's economic growth, as the investment accounts for a significant share of gross domestic product. Yet the broader measure of investment China uses to calculate GDP rose in the third quarter despite the sharp decline in fixed asset investment, leaving economists scrambling for how to explain the discrepancy. What? One economist was quoted as saying, "Buh?" Another said. In a November report, Goldman Sachs said it does not expect fixed asset investment to weigh on economic growth because the decline is, quote, overstated. The investment bank said that most of the downturn is, quote, a statistical correction of previously overreported data rather than a genuine slowdown. Last month, Fu Linghui, the spokesman and chief economist of China's National Bureau of Statistics, attributed the decline to, quote, a complex and severe external environment and, quote, fierce domestic competition that has hurt investment returns and dragged down corporate profitability. He noted, however, that investment in high-tech industries such as green energy and aerospace is growing rapidly, a sign that overall investment might be slowing but is also optimizing. Interesting. Economic Daily, a Chinese-owned state-owned newspaper, said in November that the country has entered a new high-quality phase of development, echoing official talking points. It accused foreign media of seizing on the investment stall to sensationalize a crisis theory about the Chinese economy. We're all looking for the guy who did this. Writing in your article that they're saying that you're doing the thing that you're doing is just a beautiful move. Anyway, so that's the Chinese economy. We're going to look at one more article before we wrap up, and it's about the American economy. If you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer. I donate directly using Command Tip, and you can support me on Patreon, and please do. And VOD watchers as well. Thank you for watching. I really enjoy all your comments, and I look forward to them, honestly, all week. It really fills me with joy, the thoughtful and long comments that people leave. And you too can support the stream if you want to. Okay, we are going to look at some American economics, some states' rights. It's all popping off. This is Trump signs executive order to neuter state AI laws. Whee! The order would create one federal regulatory framework for artificial intelligence, President Trump told reporters in the Oval Office. President Trump signed an executive order on Thursday that aims to neuter state laws that limit the artificial intelligence industry, a win for tech companies that have lobbied against the regulation of the booming technology. The order grants broad authority to the Attorney General to sue states and overturn laws that did not support the quote, United States global AI dominance, putting dozens of AI safety and consumer protection laws at risk. If states keep their laws in place, Mr. Trump directed federal regulators to withhold funds for broadband and other projects. Mr. Trump, who has said it is important for America to dominate AI, has criticized the state laws for generating a confusing patchwork of regulations. He said his order would create one federal regulatory framework that would override state laws, and added it was critical to keep the United States ahead of China in technology. It's got to be one source, Mr. Trump told reporters in the Oval Office, surrounded by officials including David Sachs, the AI and crypto czar. You can't go to 50 different sources. Mr. Trump has increasingly embraced the AI industry, signing executive orders to limit regulation, provide access to federal data, and make it easier for companies to build infrastructure to power the technology. He has also knocked down barriers to exporting chips that drive AI, including this week, and publicly praised the company's leaders. He has given Mr. Sachs, who is also a Silicon Valley investor, heavy influence over policy decisions. That all seems healthy and good for the economy. The order on Thursday, which has sparked broad bipartisan opposition, is likely to be challenged in court by states and consumer groups on the grounds that only Congress has the authority to override state laws, legal experts said. If Mr. Trump succeeds in neutering state laws, he should instead offer a robust national standard on AI regulations, said Wes Hodges, the acting director of the Center for Technology and the Human Person at the right-leaning Heritage Foundation. Hang on, no. I got tripped up by this. Sorry. He's the director of the Center for Technology and the Human Person. No, that can't be right. Yes. The center is at the Heritage Foundation. The Center for Technology and the Human Person at the right-leaning Heritage Foundation. Okay, I thought for a second we just found the one guy who has a soul at the Heritage Foundation. Doing so before establishing commensurate national protections is a carve-out for big tech, Mr. Hodges said. New generative AI technology can imitate human writing and voices, create realistic videos and images taken off. But the technology can be misused to trick consumers, and chatbots have been documented offering harmful advice to minors, among other issues. States have rushed to fill a void of federal regulation with their own laws on AI safety, requiring certain safety measures from companies and putting guardrails around the way the technology can be used. This year, all 50 states and territories introduced AI legislation, and 38 states adopted about 100 laws, according to the National Conference on State Legislatures. California has passed a law that requires the biggest AI models, including OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, to test for safety and disclose the results. See, that's a state regulation there. California is requiring that they test for safety and disclose the results. A pretty, basic regulation as regulations go. South Dakota passed a law banning deepfakes, which are realistic AI-generated videos, in political advertisements within months of an election. Utah, Illinois, and Nevada passed laws related to AI chatbots and mental health, requiring disclosures that users are engaging with chatbots and adding restrictions on data collection. At the signing of the order, Mr. Sachs said that the administration would target the most onerous state laws, pointing to AI legislation that could embed ideological bias within AI models. Holy fucking Christ. States have also passed a growing number of child safety regulations targeting AI chatbots and social media companies that use AI-based technologies. Thursday's order said it would not preempt laws related to child safety, but did not offer details. Blocking state laws regarding AI is an unacceptable nightmare for parents and anyone who cares about protecting children online, said Sarah Gardner, the chief executive of HEAT Initiative, a child safety group. States have been the only effective line of defense against AI harms. Good Lord. AI companies have waged a fierce lobbying campaign in Congress and the White House to get rid of the state regulations. Earlier this year, some lawmakers attempted to include a decade-long moratorium on state AI laws in the domestic policy bill, but dropped the measure after strong bipartisan opposition. A 50-state patchwork is a startup killer, Mark Andreessen of the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz posted on social media last month. And that's just where the article ends. Fucking hell. Okay, so what have we learned about the New York Times in conclusion? Thoughts in chat, let me know. Anyone, if you want to support the stream, consider paying for the stream. Yeah, so I think, like, in terms of understanding this as the marketplace of ideas, if Ezra and Ross Douthat and other people on the smidge to the left of center, smidge to the right of center of the American Overton window are debating in this marketplace, I think, you know, a first thing that's worth us observing here is that, like, every single normative but horrifying idea handed down from the ruling class is handed down here. Like, these are the halls of turning capitalist logic into common sense. Like, this is where it's happening. I think everything, all of the things that are necessary to construct the kind of illusion of American democracy need to be underlying assumptions here. You know, American exceptionalism for one, the complete, like, ignorance of class politics or material politics, class struggle, socialism, the need to defend against, you know, our enemies, other countries doing well at economy. These kind of ideas are, like, left as an unstated assumption that's, like, actually quite significant once you look at it, and leads us to suddenly there's a guy who's, like, talking about birth rates after he was saying, damn, it's crazy how racist Trump is. Hermeneutics is a good analysis here. None of the bad things can change. Thoughts and prayers. However, everything that is going wrong for us, we can blame on foreigners. Yeah, I quite like that. That seems like a pretty good core idea present in the New York Times. Volpix989, referring to the end of the article, says, a startup killer. I wish it worked. Absolutely. Vaudrella says of what I just said, normative, handed down from the ruling class, perfect summary. Thank you. Well, hopefully we all learned something about the New York Times, and when we encounter pieces in the New York Times in future, we're going to understand the canvas that the painting is painted on a little better. One more time, if you want to support me, just in general, patreon.com/SophieFromMars is my Patreon. That's my main source of income, and keeps me alive, helps me to pay the bills and eat food, and keep doing what I do. So please support me there if you would like to. And I'll be back next week, same time, possibly a bit earlier if I can manage it. I actually said that I was going to start at 7 this week because I thought, I keep on saying I'll start at 6 and then I start at 7. So if I say I'll start at 7, maybe I'll actually do it on time. And I start at 7:30. Which is a bit dire. I'll be back next week. I think that will be the last stream of December. because the week after, that would be Boxing Day, I think. So please do support me if you can. We'll have a lot less opportunities to stream this month at all, and also it's a month where I really would like to have more disposable income to buy nice things for people I love. Everybody have a wonderful week, and I think it's close enough now that people who hate Christmas can't complain too much. Merry Christmas, everyone. I'll see you all for Liberal Slop Stream next week. Okay. Bye! Oh, I didn't do the animal noises. Everyone do your favorite animal noises. Okay, bye-bye. See you next week. Bye!